Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast, is brought to you by you. If you want to learn how to support our podcast network, head to patreon.com/laststandmedia.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast. I'm honored to be your host, Dagan, the Dagster Moriarty, fastest guns in the East. We're happy to have you. We're going to talk about a handful of topics, and you guys sort of yell at your phone or computer whenever you want to chime in. We can't hear you, of course, but I think audience participation is important. So play along today, won't you? Ladies and germs, just look at this cast of characters we have gathered here for you today. Behold, I don't know that I've seen a foursome this special since the Teletubbies. My God, you're in for a treat today. Let me introduce you to these handsome devils one by one, starting with my only slightly younger but decidedly less distinguished brother, Colin Moriarty. Kyle, welcome to the circus.
Thank you. I'm substantially younger than you, and also,
God damn it.
Also, so you're sticking with the greetings and salutations, even though I told you can write your own.
I can't drop it. It's too special. I think we're going to iterate on it until it's completely diluted. But let me do it slowly.
Yeah. Okay. Take your time. Thank you for having me. Yeah, everything's good on my end. Just been doing some yard work, and it's that time of year, you know. Like some people around me had already gotten 2 mows in, and I'm like, I'm letting this thing fucking go, you know. And then
you're farming it,
right? And then I was like, I think I'm good, but then you're like clogging. It's like, you know, it just stops because it's so thick, and I have that thick lawn, you know.
Same.
I got thick other things too, but the lawn specifically is thick.
It's got girth.
Oh yeah, because I told you guys, there's all these lawn companies, you know, that spray your lawn and do the fertilizer, but we have this company that we use that doesn't even, they don't advertise or anything like that, and it's only a few of them, a few people that run it. It's called Dr.
This sounds
Vaughn's.
shady. This is already
no, it's awesome.
Really
it's awesome. It's called Dr. Vaughn's, and it's a I was gonna say a mom and dad. It's not a mom and dad. It's a husband and wife. And so the way I learned about them is that there's this guy around the corner from me who has the best lawn in the entire neighborhood. So I went up and talked to him, and I noticed he had like a lawn care company truck in front of him. I thought he was Dr. Vaughn because it said Dr. But he works for Dr. Vaughn, and they're just a very small company where the wife and husband are both like PhDs in like agriculture and some other weird shit. And anyway, They just put everyone to shame. They have all these like Virginia Green and all these like kind of big companies that just come and spray.
Sure.
These guys and they don't advertise it. The advertisement is like, who the hell did your lawn? So
word of mouth.
Yeah. So like our lawn started looking amazing. And then the people across the street, we're friends with them. They're like, who did your lawn? And now they're doing their lawn and so on and so forth. Oh, they're killing it. It's probably twice as expensive as your normal like Virginia Green service for a yearly contract or whatever, but pays dividends if you care. And because I love a green lawn. I want to stunt.
Sure.
You know?
You gotta get that emerald green. That's a baller. Like no real advertising, no real marketing, just relying on word of mouth.
Yeah, they have just a small client base, and they get to work together. And what's funny, like the wife and the husband, the other guy does stuff too, and he sometimes comes over, but they come once a month, and they'll leave a little tag on your door and say what they did. Like we put this kind of fertilizer, and we did this thing, and we sprayed this thing, and it's always good. And they're very sweet, and they're older. They're probably in their 60s, I would say. And they look like they really like each other still, which is cool. Like they work together. And I don't know. Shout out to Dr.
Putting
Vaughn.
Up that facade. Now, how's your weed situation that you got? It's taken because I use an organic service, and it's pretty effective, but it's not as effective as if like you got like a lawn doctor or someone who just throws the chemicals on there.
Oh yeah. No, the weeds, I just weed by hand. Everything else I do myself. Like the only thing these people do is just fertilize the lawn specifically. I was just out there weeding 2 days ago because it's warm. Like it's unusually warm. I think everything's confused. Like all the animals are confused. Like spiders are starting to come outside, and they're like, it's too early. People are covering their trees down here because of like it's still dipping below.
Yeah, it gets cold again.
I don't know.
Yeah, the groundhogs are all fucked up.
We'll get into all that when I get to my topic. But anyway, it's good to be here. Glad I don't have to host this show anymore. It's all yours now. By the way, Constellation went live without me and people were like, "Oh, it's better without Colin," or "I don't mind Colin not being here." It's like perfect.
That's a
This is
minimum of
exactly
people
what I
saying.
want. So keep that feedback coming, and we'll circulate me right out of this show, no problem. Dagan, thank you for having me.
You're granting Colin's wish. Well, I'm happy if you're happy, Kyle.
Well, I'm never really happy, but I don't know when the last time I was that was happy, but yeah.
Fair enough, my friend. Well, it's good to see you. Next, I give to you, and thank you out there for waiting patiently. I know you're excited. I'm super excited. The pride of all of Europe, Belgium's most important legend. I said it.
Wow.
He said he'd take me to the Stella Artois compound to drink directly from the giant vats of beer. Yeah. He promised, and I haven't forgotten, Lockmort, everybody.
Oh, thank you. What a nice introduction. I'm always so honored when you guys invite me on. You're always so nice. But then before we start rolling, you're very mean. But at least you're very nice when we start rolling. I really appreciate that.
We'll turn it on. Like that. Yeah. We'll insult you and we'll say a few things about this, that, and the other thing.
Absolutely. Lockmore, it's been too long. We're like the lawn people. We have to act nice. We have to put up that front. Right?
Yeah.
Behind the scenes, we're just angry, obnoxious bastards. That's very on brand for American. How you doing, Locke? It's been months, as we said before the show, that since you and I have really been face to face.
Yeah, it's been a while. No, I've been very good. It's been very busy. It's warm here too, but I don't have a lawn, so I don't really have to do anything outside, which is good. I can just stay inside. But I kind of missed something here because you guys switched hosting, which I completely missed. So you're the new host, and
we kind of went under the radar. I feel like now, Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong. It was kind of a trial thing. We were going to kind of see how we felt about it, how people responded to it. It was kind of Colin's trying to get things off his plate. I think doing Sacred is a big lift. Let's be honest.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it was a thing that's in the offing, but I guess the reaction has been. I don't think the large reaction has been, let's get rid of Colin. I think that's like a few people joking around.
Yeah, but I'm just really gleaming onto that. And so what ended up happening, Locke, was I went to Boston a couple weekends ago with Micah. And so I wasn't here for the recording day. So it was going to be the first one I missed anyway. And then in the back, like I've been doing this for a really long time. So I know exactly what everyone's going to say when certain things happen or whatever. And I'm like, listen, what's going to happen is there's going to be a contingent of people that are happy that I'm not there. And a contingent of people that want Dagan to continue to host. What they don't understand, it's kind of like when people are like, fuck sacred symbols. I just listen to Defining Duke and I'm like, I own them both. So with this, I'm like, okay, perfect. Because I have so much on my plate. See, one of the things about, like you said about sacred symbols, it is way more work than people think it is to do a show like that. Yeah. I'm not saying to record it, but to prepare it and have a cogent list of things to do or whatever. Absolutely. If I were, and I'm not saying this as an insult because this was me on Podcast Beyond specifically. If I were Dustin and Chris, I'd be like, this is the easiest thing in the world. Like, we get to talk about video games for 4 hours. I just need to be prepared and like mentally aware of things. But putting the show together and so that's like a whole day of my life every week. But just playing games and being aware and talking to people and stuff. It's the little things. It's like the last 10% of that's what makes the show special. So I'm trying to get myself off of some content just to be able to focus. So I'm not always recording the next thing. Like I think doing Sacred Plus once a week has been massively beneficial to the quality of the show, like clearly. Nice. And so I think that will be the same for this too. And I'd like to duck at, so I'd like to be on maybe half of the episodes of Constellation or something like that, but definitely not all of them. No.
Yeah. Cool. And I think, you know what, you got to be happy. The audience has to be content. We got it as long as everybody's happy going forward, right? It's like
I don't want it to all hinge on me. I know that sounds weird, but like we have a huge group of people. Maybe that's too much to ask. Maybe it does hinge on me and it has to, and that's the nature of it. We'll figure that out. But we have so many people to draw from. Like we have a really great cadre of people. Like why do I need to take one of the spots? It doesn't really even make any sense. Yeah.
So the bench is deep, my friend. You're very fortunate. And it's good to be in that position where you could kind of come and go as you please. And Sacred's also your bread and butter. Right. I mean, I know Brad's doing awesome with Summon Sign, but that's also an important just monetary component for the company. So Sacred's important. And, I could just be the goof coming in and doing this show. And I enjoy doing it. It's my pleasure. So why not? So listen, guys, we have to, as we round out our hellos here, as we close out our highs today, Constellation Faithful, I want to introduce you to a man who really needs no introduction. He's notoriously lukewarm on anime. Dustin Furman, everybody.
I don't know. This day, usually your intro is very authentic, true. Well, maybe not. Maybe too nice, but the lukewarm. All right. I actually am
You
kind
can
of
take it or leave it.
This
right?
is the
Anime?
problem. People get mad at me when I say that I am lukewarm on modern anime. Because they're like, oh, you're trying to say you're not a weeb, trying to hide it. It's like, no, I think a lot of this shit is garbage, but it's fine. It's whatever. But yeah, I'm doing just okay today. Getting through this week. I think of the episode of The Office. There's one where they talk about how Michael has to sign this paper once a week, and then this paper every 2 weeks, and this paper once a month, and once every quarter. And then there's a perfect storm where it all happens at once. And this week is like week before the week leading up to our live show. So we're also recording in advance for those few episodes. And then I'm recording each day before leading up to leaving on Friday. So there's just a lot of stuff going on. But it's okay. Like, it feels good because we're going to have so much fun this weekend. And Locke, I don't know when your plane's leaving to head over to New York City. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. There's still time, right?
Yeah. That would be great, but I couldn't get off work. I really tried because I really did my best. I asked them, I explained them for what it was, but I quit my job. My job is ending April 1st. So,
wow.
Yeah, so these last couple of weeks, they really couldn't give me the time off. Otherwise, I would have loved being there. It sounds awesome. Oh, but I guess you guys don't know what's happening, right? Or not everything, I guess.
No, I'm saying I don't know, and Dustin doesn't know. This is the first show we're live, so we're going to really see how this goes. Like, if this goes well, then I'll be very comfortable with it. If it doesn't go well, then it's going to be like, well, this is the only show I didn't have a material, creative direction perspective on, and so this is going to be me now moving forward. But I think like my ideas, but I'm really comfortable with this idea because we have such smart people surrounding us, people that know what to do.
Sure.
And again, it's like one less thing. I was actually talking about this. It's funny, the live shows. I was saying, like, they're almost who was I saying? Was I saying to you, Dagan, on text yesterday? I was like, they're almost not really worth doing because they're so low margin for us. If you're a band, that's where you make your money. That's like what you want to be doing. If you're us, we're like, I'll just be honest with you and tell you, like, we want to do London later in the year. I mean, this has been a goal of ours for a long time, and I think we're getting things set up. It's like that will be at best a break-even situation for us. Like, we do not make enough money on these shows to bring everyone. If it was just like a one-man act, like a comedian, I'd be making $40,000 a show or something like that.
Right.
But it's not even like we're just getting over the lucrative like hump of like, is this even worth doing? But then we kind of figured out, and Dagan and I talked it out, but I've thought about it many times, is it's kind of an important thing to remind us why we do what we do, and like for our most hardcore fans, and also just to get us together. So it's like it's kind of like a net neutral way to just gather everyone. So I bring all of that up because, Locke, in Europe, if we go, obviously we'll have you over to the UK. If you're willing to go, leave the continent.
I can't wait. Leave the I guess I have to leave the continent. Technically, yeah, that's true. The UK is not Europe anymore. But no, yeah, I'll definitely be there. You guys, even if you stay there longer, come to Belgium. We're only like an hour away.
Well, I'd like to do that. I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
And the 3 times I've been to Europe, one time I went to Iceland and I didn't even go to mainland Europe. And then the other 2 times I was in multiple countries like the UK and Germany, but it was always like for work and stuff like that. So I never like, there was a night where we were in Cologne and my old friend, Andrew Goldfarb, who's the community manager at Sucker Punch now. And I told you guys that I told the whole story about him, about how he was the first person to be like, I don't want to be your friend anymore, but he did it before what happened at Kind of Funny. So I kind of respect it. You know, so no grief to him at all. I did reach out to him recently, but he didn't reach out back to me, which is fine. But I have this very vivid memory of us being at Gamescom, and we were in Cologne. We had like one night off before we were leaving, and he's like, let's just go to Paris. Like, we could just take the train to Paris. And I'm like, what if something happens and like we can't get back, and then we're like gonna be stuck? I mean, it's not like we're gonna be stuck for, God forbid, permanently in Europe. But it's just so funny how close things are to each other. So if we do come later in the year, I think we will, like, what I'm going to tell everyone in the company that's going to come with us is be like, I'll fly you there and I'll fly you back and I'll put you up for 2 days, and like whatever else you want to do in between those times is yours. Like, you can go right back or you can stay, but it's all going to be on your dime. But it's what people at IGN used to do. Like, when we would be sent to Japan, it's be like, let's just go a couple days early and leave a couple days late. And it's like, okay. I knew guys that used to stay in Europe and go to South Korea and do all these things. So,
Wow.
that's, I'll be there for the first time for leisure, really. Because even when I went to Iceland, you don't go to Iceland for leisure. I don't know why you go to Iceland, but you definitely don't go there for leisure. And so, yeah, it would be cool to go to like the low countries, to France. I'd even love I know I'm going on and I'm sorry, but
oh, please.
I think back with a little bit of regret at my time at IGN, just because I could have gone to so many places. And I was invited to Japan probably a dozen times, in which I've been to Japan a couple times, but I could have gone probably 12 more times, 15 more times. Well, just being like, come every year, Bandai Namco would be like, you want to come to the Tales event this year? Like they have a Tales Fest. And I'm like, I'm not going to fucking Tales Fest, you know? But in reality, it's like, why didn't I just do that? I remember Housemarque used to invite me to Finland, and I could have gone to like Italy to play Assassin's Creed and Morocco for Assassin's Creed and
dude,
all these different, and I'm like, God, just leave me the fuck alone, to the point where like everyone externally and internally knew like Colin doesn't really want to go anywhere. And in hindsight, it's like, damn, dude, I probably could have seen 10 more countries, at least. South Korea, Australia, certainly. I'm never doing that. That flight is just insane. And so on and so forth. So I have a little bit of regret. So as an adult, yeah, I'd like to kind of pick some of those countries off and just have been there and seen them. But it's kind of like, we got it all in the US. I don't really feel like I want, I don't want, or I'm not even being facetious. I'm not longing for it, you know? Like the experience of travel. Like, I'm like, I don't know, man. We have such a beautiful country here. I've been to almost all of it. I've only not been to, I was trying to figure it out. It's like, I think I've only not been to like 10 states, maybe something like that. It might even be fewer than that. So it's like, I don't know. We got it all, baby. Let's pop this World War off so we can see how well these oceans work again. We haven't tested them in a while.
Soon.
It's not too late, dude. You're still a young man. Maybe you do Hawaii and Alaska. Just get those out of the way.
Yeah, those are two that I have not been to. It's like I don't think I've been to Idaho, but I've been to like all sorts of random places, you know, but I think like Idaho, South Dakota, I think was one. Yeah, so on and so forth. But we have the mountains, we have the prairies, we got the oceans, the deserts, the Arctic, the tropics.
Sure. Yeah.
I was looking at a map of James Polk during the Mexican-American War in the 1840s. You know, that's when we took Mexico and all parts of Mexico and all of that. Their initial map went so much further, and to see like what they thought the United States might be is so funny. Like it goes all the way into Central America. It incorporates like all of the islands of the Caribbean. During the next World War, we'll have an opportunity.
Maybe we'll get there.
Europe's going to be so busy dealing with whatever they're going to be dealing with that we can go in and start picking off their islands in the Caribbean.
Start taking everything. Well, listen, Dustin makes a good point. We're recording this on a Wednesday ahead of the live show, getting it off everybody's plate for their responsibilities for New York. We normally here on a Friday, so we're a couple of days early. And, you know, Kyle, the thing is, too, first of all, a moment of silence for my broken heart, another live show where I'm not going to see Locke. But I do suspect we're going to meet in Europe. And I think definitely. If Colin could get these plans off the ground at some point, it's going to happen. I hear it from a lot of people, especially from the UK, that if they get in touch, maybe I hear from one or two people in a DM a week, and they always bring that up in the conversation somewhere. Like, when are we going to see your faces in person? So it's pretty, you know.
We have a big European audience. Yeah, I would say if Australia is not European, but they're another big foreign audience. But I would say maybe a third to a quarter of our audience is European.
Wow, it's that big.
Yeah,
it does make sense if you think about it from my very limited.
Why they like us is anyone's guess. I mean, but if I had to listen to people talk in Europe, I wouldn't want to listen to them either.
Oh, I see. I don't feel that way. That's so
welcome to the show, Locke.
I feel so welcome again. You should tell people that before you announce the show, though, you should tell them that they need a passport. Because I got one last year. Because I thought last year you guys were going to go to the UK, because you can't really freely travel to it anymore. You need a passport, even if you go from somewhere else in Europe. And mine took like a year or half a year to get cleared. So
it can take a long time. Yeah. Ooh. Oh, you got it. You got it.
Well,
baby.
This is expired. Actually, it's funny you say this, because this week I was filling out my expiration paperwork. It should only take 2 months. If it's expired within a certain amount of time, like 5 years, I think. You just send it into them with a new picture and some information, and then they just send you a new one, and they send yours back. Because that was one of the things I was bummed about. I'm like, I have so many stamps in here.
They do.
You know,
you can keep it for
that's
posterity.
like my favorite part. Like, it's just some of the stamps. You know, this is one of my Gamescom trips. This is one of my TGS trips. You know, it's a nice little memory to have. And put the bag stickers on the back, like an OG traveler, just to make it look a little more sophisticated,
official, officially official.
Yeah, so I do have. Micah has hers, and I do have to get that done. And I'll probably be doing that when we get back from New York.
Yeah,
and you can pay an expedited fee. It's like it's literally. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that if you go to like certain state department buildings or something, and you're like, I have to travel in the next week, like they'll do it.
They'll do it for a price. Yeah, absolutely. And they expedite. I think they give that 2-month sort of limit, but it's usually within weeks, even if you don't expedite it.
Right.
You know, that's 2 months is like a worst case.
Dude,
scenario.
The first time was shady though. Dustin, you must have just done this when did you just get your passport when you went to Japan?
Oh, right.
I had to renew it, but
because you went to where have you been, in Mexico or something like that? Where's it?
I've been to Dominican Republic. I've been to France and
France.
I'm trying to remember what's the country that I went on the cigar trip.
Cuba.
Not Cuba, dude. Yeah. But yeah, dude, I don't know how long the timing is now, but Japan I think it took 6 or more months to renew. It took a while. So I don't know what's like now. Maybe they're caught up. Maybe it could be worse, honestly.
Yeah, I think that we were online looking, and they said it was like 3 to 4 months or something like that, and still kind of backed up from COVID. It doesn't really make any sense. That's classic bureaucracy, though. But
that really is.
But I remember when you first send yours in, though, you have to send them your birth certificate, like your actual birth certificate, and then you just have to hope you get it back, and you do. But it's a little creepy, you know?
Yeah, Holly's was more complicated because she was renewing for the first time since we got married. So because she had a new name, she had to send in her birth certificate and stuff. And she was like, what the fuck? Like, why do you need that? Why can't I just like go show this to like someone at the post office? But no, they wanted you to mail it in. But we did get it back. So
will you guys need a work visa too? Because you're going for work technically, right? So what do you need, like a work visa to go there? Or
that might be, but we're not doing that.
Oh, you know what? That's a good point.
The U can eat my asshole. I'm not getting a fucking work visa. We're coming in and doing a show and then leaving. So no, maybe that's the way it works. But
I may find out about that soon, Locke. Actually, believe it or not, Ireland is really picking up as far as animation work, and they're like, it really makes sense if you chart animation back to the 80s, because they started really kicking in terms of service work, like farming stuff out from North America to Ireland in the 80s. And they just really kind of grew into their own as far as like developing a proper animation studio culture there. And they were notoriously sort of locked into UK only applicants, but they're starting to branch out now. So I'm talking to an Irish studio that does beautiful work, by the way. And if I get to that point with them, I may, even though I'm working remotely, I'm going to have to work something out with rights to work in Ireland or the UK at large.
Nice.
So yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of stuff going on in Europe, which is really hurting. It's really hurting the American animation economy, but it's great for them, you know? So, all right, you guys ready to get this plane off the ground or what? We've got a very nice, kind of exquisitely crafted and curated selection of topics today, like a great wine list. And Locke, I want to start with you, not only because I'm excited to see you, I don't get to see you too frequently, but I thought let's keep the podcast honest with a little Euro flavor. Oh. And you have a fun topic to get the proceedings started properly, I think. So take it away whenever you're ready.
Sure. Well, I'm almost 40, which is disgustingly old, and I start to feel it too. But I mostly start to feel it in my brain somehow. Like I start remembering stuff from when I was a kid, way more. And well, we talked about it earlier, but I live in Europe, and Europe is incredibly small. So if I want to go back to the place where I grew up, I maybe have to travel like an hour by bus, and then I'm there. That's where our old house is. So a couple of weeks ago, I decided to take a bus and just go to our old house, see what it looked like. And it was still there, of course. It still looked the same. And then I walked from our old house to school, the same route I used to walk. And all these memories came flooding back from like 20, 25 years ago when I was still living there. And then that got me to think, like, what is my very first memory? What is the first thing I remember? And everyone always has these beautiful memories that they have, or these beautiful little stories they have attached to it. But my very first memory, I remember it very well because I was sitting in the back of the car with my parents in front, and my brother was sitting next to me. And my brother told me, I think I was 5 years old, and my brother told me, you're not going to remember this. You'll never remember this. And I remember telling him, fuck you, I'll remember this forever. And I did. So that is my very first stupid memory, which is completely meaningless. But that got me also thinking, like, what was the happiest that I've ever been? What was my happiest memory? And I also went back to my childhood there, weirdly enough. I remember when I was, I think 5 or 6 years old, a couple of years after my first memory, my dad and that same brother took me to my first movie in a movie theater. And that was Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade. I think that was in 1989 or 1990. Yeah. 89, yeah. So I was very young. I don't think I was allowed in there even. But they took me to see it. And that was such a world-changing experience for me. I vividly remember sitting in the theater and looking at the movie, of course. And I know after the movie, a friend was going to come over. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, this is the best day ever. I get to go to a movie. I get to see an actual movie. It's fun. And then later, my friend is going to come over and we get to play video games or do some other stuff. And I remember thinking, wow, it does it ever get better than this? And it never did. But that was one of the best moments of my life, really. So I was curious what you guys' first memory is, and also what your happiest memory is.
Yeah, this is a great topic, man. I could talk about this kind of stuff all day. Dust, you know what? I'll kick it over to you first. Give us your first memories and your happiest memories.
Sure. My first memory. And I don't know why this is my first memory. I think that's how it goes for a lot of people. It's just like you remember this one thing and then you kind of calculate like, okay, was there anything before that? And I can't think of anything earlier. And so this would have been when I was around 3 years old. And I mentioned before on the show, my mom had me when she was 16. So for the first 4 or 5-ish years of my life, I lived at my grandma's house with her. And you know, I still saw my dad all the time. They ended up getting married. It all worked out. But I remember being at my grandma's house and being in the kitchen. And it's the same thing, like same layout to this day. So I've not like relived this memory, but one of the times that I've been there recently, I was like, oh yeah, this is the spot where it happened. I remember in the corner of the room in one of the shelves, there was like a medicine cabinet. And I don't know why this happened here, but I remember my mom opening up the medicine cabinet and giving me a copy of Toy Story on VHS. And this is one of my earliest memories for me, for some reason, is getting this copy on VHS. And I was thinking about it because I looked, the VHS release date was October 29th, 1996. I don't know if it was on release day. Maybe it was a year later. So maybe I was a little older, like 4-ish or something. But yeah. It's more meaningful now thinking about my mom being a 19-year-old with a kid and getting this, this present of Toy Story, which, I mean, already at that point, I have a Toy Story comforter that I still use sometimes that I got when I was a baby. I have there's a picture of me like when I was real little, like a toddler, that I have a Buzz Lightyear shirt on that I've kept. Yes. Just so I can pass it down someday to the next generation. But yeah, I don't know why that's my first memory, but I remember getting Toy Story on VHS in approximately 1996.
Dustin, this makes me feel so old. When that movie came out, 95 was my first year of art school. That's how far apart we are in age.
Yeah.
It's so and remember that, like, that was that era of Disney, like the big VHS plastic clamshells.
Yeah, like the soft
nostalgic
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really nice quality. You know, it's like almost like the egg test. Like you could drop that VHS down the flight of stairs. And
it was iconic marketing, you know?
Yeah.
And then others tried to kind of replicate it. But there was probably a patent around that you couldn't really do it quite like that or whatever. That's a good point, though.
Yeah.
Dustin was just a little boy.
Just a little baby boy. Yeah, those the Disney VHS, those were quality. I remember I had like that and Mulan, and Hercules was another favorite. And I love seeing it when I go to like Goodwill or something like that. I always go to the VHS section and just look at them briefly because they're always there. I know some people like have held on to them thinking they'd be worth something. They're not. Maybe some variants are, but it's nice to go and look and remember. As far as happiest memory, I was thinking about this, and it's funny because I think that the gut impulse for a lot of married people is that the answer should be the day you got married. And I was discussing this with Holly last night, and I was like, I think you and I are on the same page that we were very happy the day we got married, but it wasn't like the pinnacle of our relationship of joy. Like, I think I was more happy the day we started dating than the day we got married, because it just kind of at that point was like this lead up into that. And honestly, a wedding day is honest. I don't want to say it's not happy at all, but it's stressful. You've got all these people here. You have to make sure everything goes right. And then you're immediately like, we were going to New York City to go on a honeymoon. So kind of just goes by super fast. So surprise, it's not my wedding day, but I wanted to put that out there, that I want to acknowledge it. I was trying to really think, because it's tough. There's like 2 or 3. I'll narrow it down though. The days that I were the most happy, I look back on as the happiest days, are 1, the day we got Frisk was legitimately so incredibly happy, because we were at an apartment for the first 5 years of our marriage and we couldn't have a dog, and we were both extreme dog lovers. And so we would sit and be like in our apartment sad, thinking like, when we get a house, we're going to get a dog. And it was funny that getting Frisk was just kind of random in that we were in the new house, but we didn't know quite when we wanted to do it. And then we just, looked on Craigslist, saw this picture of this cute little dog, went to get her. And the one key memory of that day was we went to this random stranger's house to look at these 3 puppies, these Dachshund Rat Terrier puppies. And I told Holly before we get in, if you like one of these 3 dogs, I want you to decide which one. I don't want to influence your decision. So we went in and we saw them. And I immediately, when I saw Frisk, I was like, I hope Holly picks the girl dog, the girl there was 2 boys and 1 girl. I was like, I hope she does. And then we left, and immediately when we got in the car, she was like, I want to get the girl. I was like, yes. So we knew immediately. And it's funny because we told the lady, like, we'll call you in a bit, but we were like leaving the driveway, and she like called her up, was like, okay, yeah, we're gonna take her. So that's one of the happiest days. And then I don't know, this other one might seem trivial to some people, but one of the days that I was most happy ever was my second time at E3, and it was getting a pass that had the name of the company that I had started on it. Like, we had done it. And I was like, damn, I remember watching E3 videos off like in 2005, thinking of if I'll ever get there. And then, getting into film stuff, but then eventually coming back and be like, okay, I want to do games. I got to figure it out. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to get my friends. We're going to make it happen. And then finally, after years going to that E3, which I'd went the year before, but it was on a pass that I won through Sony. So it wasn't the same as seeing like your name, Handsome Phantom on it. I was like, wow, this is crazy. I made it to the Mecca, and I don't really know how, but we made it here. We're going to do awesome stuff. And it was a very like affirming career moment. And obviously, that didn't end up being my main career in games, but it felt like the step. And I think that was also, that might have been the E3 that I went to your place, Colin, when you interviewed Ben.
So it was
kind of
2000.
Oh, cool.
18? Yeah, when was that?
It would have been 18 or 19. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because 19 was the last
that
one.
long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I do remember. It's funny that you say that, Dustin, because I don't remember almost anything about recording Fireside Chats, but I do have a photograph in my mind of kind of like you and Ben sitting there. And I don't know if that's just something I was kind of thrown into my gray matter while everything else has kind of been churned through. Because a lot of those would go the same way. Lots of nice people and interesting stories, but you let them in, say your niceties and all of that. But yeah, it's cool. Like there was a little something deeper there, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, those two are probably the most happy. I just to end off, one other happy memory that I was happy because I was able to realize it in the moment. And Locke, don't make a face at me here. But when I was in Japan with Holly, I was like, this is going to be one of the best memories of my life because I'm totally away. I'm on the other side of the planet of everyone I know for 10 days at a place I've always wanted to go. And we're just here to have fun. And it's not like previous vacations where we were really trying to be careful about spending too much money. Not that we were going crazy in Japan, but it was a true vacation in a lot of ways in a strange and amazing place. So I really, in the moment during those 10 days, thought I'm going to soak in as much as I can because I know I'm going to look back on this trip for the rest of my life. So it's important too for happy memories. Know when you're in them because you don't always get that luxury.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said, Dustin. I mean, that's a really nice, well-rounded collection of memories. I mean, think about it. You have a personal one, you have career, you have travel, you have a pet memory. Let me ask you about Frisk.
Yeah.
Remind me, how old is Frisk now?
She is 5 and she'll be turning 6 pretty soon.
Okay. Yeah. Same age as Kiki, as our dog. It's so funny. And Colin could relate to this. Locke, I don't know. I know you have cats. I don't know if you have a dog, but this applies to all pets because they become family members, right? They really do.
Yeah.
I think for me, every time a pet turns 4, I don't know what it is about that age specifically, you already start worrying about them aging.
Mm-hmm.
You already the wheels already start turning. When am I going to lose this?
Dude, it's so funny because Rush turns 4 in 2 days, and we've been talking about that.
It's a weird.
Oh, damn.
That's the age where it just starts to, I don't know what it is. It starts clicking and you start, the little bit of anxiety. Just
oh my God, it's horrible. I told Dustin, I'm like, I feel like he's a third dead now. Like, that's the way I look at it. It's like,
I always remember you saying, I hope that I die before Rush.
Yeah. I say as a joke, Mike and I are like almost never, ever serious. We're always saying stupid shit to each other, like funny things to each other. And I always say, I'm like, they're going to have to bury me and Rush. Or I'll say to Rush, like in front of everybody, like, they're going to bury us together, Rush. Like, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, Micah did tell us on Punching Up yesterday that she hopes she dies before the Super Mario Brothers sequel movie comes out in 2026.
Be careful.
Jesus Christ.
That's a Micah quote.
She is she is a dire person sometimes, isn't she? God bless her.
Yeah. I don't think she wants to die. I just don't think she wants that movie.
Yeah, well, she can. She's willing to do what it takes to make sure that movie never happens.
She'll do whatever it takes. So yeah. So Kyle, give me your warm and fuzzies, man. Give me.
Oh hell yeah!
Oh, that deserves it. Come on. Give me your memories, Kyle. Recent, first memory. I'm very curious about your first memories because I was there.
Yeah, you were.
I could have been in the room.
You were. First of all, I have so many. It's funny because I don't know like what my first memory was, except for I have a ton of like a cornucopia of early memories that were all in like a time frame, and I have so many memories with you, Dagan. Like, and I'll get in. I can get into some of those, but so many memories. Of being a kid with you because you were so good to me. Like imagine your older brother, like you're in first grade and your brother's in like, 12th grade or 11th grade or something.
Yeah.
Like, and we're not like step brothers or brothers, half brother, we're brothers from the same parents. Dagan treated me like I was one of them the whole time. PJ too, and others. And so,
yeah, sure.
I have so many memories of that, and that's why I think like, I feel like almost you, Dana and Allie infantilize your own children. Like, and it's like, do you guys remember me? Do you remember the things you used to let me do? Like me, 6 years old, 8 years old, 10 years old.
Yeah. You bring that up a lot.
Yeah.
And it is
you
funny.
You guys don't like it. Dana especially doesn't like it. She's like, and I'm like, but like Dana was my mom for like a couple of years. Like,
yeah,
it's a whole deep thing. When I was in second and third grade, Dana basically raised me because our mom had left and our dad was working. Our dad, no one was there. Like, no. It's
true. You were kind of our first kid. I mean, Dana was 8 years your senior, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's and I think of you so much like my youngest. Like you're so similar to my son anyway, to your nephew. But yeah, that comes up a lot. I text you accidentally all the time.
No, I know. Dagan texts me like, I'm waiting outside.
I think it's my son, my 13-year-old.
I texted him. He just did it to me this past weekend, and I
do it all the time.
I texted him like, this is happening too much. Like, this is beyond like, how like our mom doesn't even every iPhone our mother has ever had has been broken, quotes, and then I'll go and fix it, like in some different ways. Like no matter like what she's doing, Dagan's actually somehow getting worse than her in this regard,
it's true.
than the 73-year-old woman.
It's not good.
But yeah, all right. So the earliest memory I think I have, and Dagan and I have talked about this over the years on Knockback sometimes, but that has a small audience, that show, and so I'm sure some of this stuff will be new to most people. But I do remember being in the kitchen of our old house. So our parents grew up in Nassau County on Long Island. Long Island, you know, if you look at Long Island, it's kind of like an oval. Nassau County is like the fifth of it or the fourth of it closest to New York City. So it goes like Nassau County, Queens, Brooklyn, River, Manhattan, right? And we grew up, so they grew up in like a different kind of, they grew up in a very idyllic time and place, 50s. They were both born in 1950. Classic baby boomers. Yeah. And so they moved to Suffolk County. Suffolk County is the other most part of Long Island. And it's further from the city, a little more rural, but that doesn't really mean anything. There's millions of people on Long Island. So there is no real rural reality on Long Island. And they moved around a few different times. Dagan was born in Nassau. Dana was born in Nassau, I think. And then they moved to Medford, which is this just random town. And there's so many Medfords. Like I grew up in New England too and went to school in Boston. It's like there's Medford, Massachusetts is the biggest.
It's like
Medford.
Springfield.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But we grew up in Medford and on Neighbor Avenue. And that house I had grown up in just the first few years of my life. You moved in there 77, right?
Yeah.
And we left 85, 86, something like that.
Yeah.
And so
I was 87.
87 maybe. I was born in 84, and I just have memories of being in the kitchen and kind of the it's a little darker, a little more wood grainy and all of this. And I've described all of this in the past, and it's like funny that might be like my first imprint. Very traditional Long Island house, probably in many other places too. It's just set up kind of like the island and like separating a dining room from or a dining space, like a breakfast nook kind of thing from a larger kitchen kind of motif. And so beyond that, like I have this whole slew of memories of just being a young kid and things that I think about. Like I remember getting the G.I. Joe Annihilator in 1990 probably, and saying Annihilator or something like that, and mom being like, no, it's Annihilator. Yeah. Like funny little memories like that.
Love that.
And I guess maybe my earliest memory that would be a little more textured would probably be like I was a real mama's boy. I still am a real mama's boy in a major way. My mom was like in a very important part of my life and is a very important part of my life, but we just have a special connection. I don't think it's beyond and above everyone else's in the families. It's just that when our parents got divorced, everyone else was kind of at different ages and off to different things. Dagan and Dana were basically off to college at that point, but I was in second grade when that happened. And I really gleamed onto my mom, but I was really like, my mom was she was a stay-at-home mom and all that. So I remember going to nursery school. We all went to Montessori school. I went for 2 years before kindergarten. And I do have a vivid memory of like grabbing onto my mom's leg and like crying and like not letting go, like not wanting to go. And that would probably be like in 1988 maybe. So maybe that's like my earliest memory, but I have so many other memories as far as like my happiest time. I thought of 3 things that I thought were interesting. I always say like I've never been happy and stuff, but like I do think that like taking an SSRI has cut the highs from my life, which I think is a necessary trade-off so I don't feel the lows for now, but I do want to get out of that loop at some point because I am recognizing that I'm not like gleaming real pleasure out of things. And it's not like I'm depressed or anything. It's like I'm just like programmed in a certain way since 2018 basically to just kind of have this more metered outlook. So fewer highs and fewer lows, but these are a few good things. I talked on Knockback in some context about this iconic night I had it was November. It was Thanksgiving break or Christmas break. Actually, it was literally, I think that Black Friday, Saturday after Thanksgiving in 2006. And we always bring up our friends, the Kochers. Knockback. They were our neighbors on Long Island before we moved and sold that house or whatever in 97. And they were my boys. They were 3 brothers. I was best friends with the youngest brother, who was a year older than me. And his older brother was, I think, 2 or 3 years older than him. And then his older brother was 2 or 3 years older than them. And they were just a really central part of my childhood, and something that when my childhood kind of got shattered apart, it was like left unresolved. And I would see them kind of over summers, and we would hang out and we would be friends or whatever. But there was just this random night in 2006 where I hadn't seen them in almost 10 years, where we got in touch, and they're like, just kind of come over to the house and hang out. And it was just like this resolution in my heart of like, I got to kind of like put a bow on it or whatever and be like, yeah. I remember just walking around their house and being like, this is so funny. It's like exactly the way I remember it. You know,
it was a time machine.
Right. And
you were transported.
And it was like, it was a setting of our childhood, or one of the settings. We were outside, we were at our house and whatever, but, and their parents were there. His father passed recently, unfortunately, in the last couple of years. But I got to see them, and we were just sitting at the old kitchen table, and we were playing poker, which was like one of our favorite things. We played Solar Quest, which was one of our favorite board games. And I remember we smoked and drank. And I remember the older brother, Chris, said something like, I never thought I'd be smoking weed with Colin Moriarty.
I love that.
Which is like such a deep memory of mine. And he's probably like 7 years older than me.
Yeah.
And like he used to babysit me and stuff. And, so that was like a really, I remember that being like, that was such a rare moment in my life of just, and it's just a meaningless thing. Like they would probably not even remember that very well. But to me, it was like finalization or whatever, or like being like, it is still here. Like the memories are real. The people are real. It kind of got pulled away from you at an unideal time. Yeah, it was cool. And then moving forward from that, just a year or so, dude, when I got hired at IGN, like, you have to understand my mentality at that time was totally different. I had really wanted to get into IGN, and I was a freelancer, and I interned twice there. And I actually got my first job offer there in 2004 when I was 19, to be the editor, an associate editor of IGN GameCube. And I could have had that job. If I wanted that job, it would have been mine. It was being given by Matt Casamassina, who helps run Apple Arcade now. And he was like the big Nintendo guru there, along with, he kind of helped find N64.com with Pear and all that. I mean, you have to, if you know the history of IGN, it's relevant to you. And so as I went through college at Northeastern, so that job offer happened after I was a freshman in college. Like that summer, I was an intern, and they were like, do you want to just kind of stay kind of situation? Or like, let's go down this road and talk about these things. And I interviewed and everything. And something pulled me back. I remember being on the phone with both mom and dad on my flip phone, being like, what do I do? And I'm so glad I said no. It would have worked out in some other different way. I could have been maybe just as bigger, but I don't want to fuck with the trajectory of my life. But I'm so glad that I went back to Northeastern, because there were so many more social experiences that I hadn't had. And I got to graduate from there as well. But I opted not to go. And when I went back, I felt like no one says no to this situation. They're happy to have me as a freelancer, and I did a lot of work for them. I would make sometimes $2,000 or $3,000 a month in freelance from IGN, which was a lot. Like I was like, I can't even believe how much money I'm making doing this at 20, 21 years old. I'd spend it all on weed and beer, but so it was kind of put away in my mind. It's like, well, this is going to be a thing that I can do on the side. I'm not going to have a career in games. That's actually right after I said no to them. It's not a coincidence that I always talk about that year or so where I didn't play video games very much. And that year was right after I said no to IGN.
Oh, wow.
And like, basically I go back to college. That's my sophomore year. And that's the year where I don't really play video games, with like rare exception. And so I get back into it. I'm writing strategy guides. I skip there's a 5th year at Northeastern, middler year, because Northeastern is an internship school, or what they call a co-op school. Like the strength of Northeastern is not only in its academics, but that it installs you in companies as a student, and you often just end up working for that company. So you often take 6 months or even a year and go work for that company in the middle. It's like being drafted by the company, basically, in some way.
Right.
And I did my internship at the Massachusetts Historical Society, but I opted to do it in the background while I was still going to school, so I wouldn't stay there, because it's a really sneaky way of Northeastern to get 5 years of tuition and 5 years of room and board out of you. And I was mindful of that even at that time, although it is very useful. So I'm not saying it's not. And I was kind of just going through the motions, and I was going to become an historian. I mean, I was like, I made my choice. I'm back here. I've got my girlfriend. I've got my friends. I'm living here. I'm studying. I'm working at the Massachusetts Historical Society, MHS. And it was all very well and good. And I was writing for IGN TV. I was writing for IGN Guides. I was doing some other stuff for database work, like database entry stuff. I'd like scroll through GameStop.com and like put in release dates and shit like that. I basically just chronicle the time I was doing it. So a lot of different things. I was still involved, but it wasn't going to be my career. And people have to understand, like, I graduated in May of 2007 from Northeastern, and I was going to go to grad school. Like, I was ready to go. I was about to matriculate into Northeastern for grad school. I had a TA position lined up, as I had noted, actually in Russian history, which was really weird. But you like did what you had to do. And I literally got the job offer. Like, I wasn't looking for it. It was like this serendipitous thing where it's like, oh, do you want to try again? You know, and very similar to the IGN GameCube job. It's like, it wasn't something I sought. It was something that was presented to me.
Yeah. Lightning kind of struck twice for you.
Right.
Which is very rare.
It is weird. Like, I was writing strategy guides up to this point. In fact, I remember that when I got the job offer, I was writing the strategy guide for the Transformers video game.
Oh, wow.
And which I still like remember so well, because it was just a weird situation, because I was living, Dad always makes fun of me. Like, I lived literally underneath. I had like a little nook under a staircase, basically, in my friend Pablo's apartment for $200 a month.
Harry Potter.
Yeah. Like Harry Potter.
And so the reason that it worked, it is funny as fuck, but the reason it worked so well is because Pablo was always with his girlfriend, and our other roommate, Latimer, was just gone all the time. And so I used to just sleep in Latimer's room, you know, and he came home a couple of times, like, while I was like just dead ass asleep in his bed. But no one cared. Like, they were totally fine. And I think they looked at it as something like, we have someone watching our space. You know, it was on Park Ave in Boston. And I was just kind of going through my email, and this was before people were texting at this time, but it was like, you know, T9 texting and stuff. And I got an email from Mark Ryan Salee, who's still my good friend. He was at my wedding. And he's like, Jason Allen's leaving. He was an old guides guy at IGN. He's like, he's going to Capcom. Do you just want to come to San Francisco and work with us? And I explored first. I was like, can I take the job and stay in Boston? That was actually the first thing I tried to do. And I was just too early in that. Like, if it was 10 years later with like the rise of remote work, but they're like, no, you really need to come here. I was like, can I kind of maybe go to grad school still and then do this at night? It would have been like horrifying. But that was kind of and I'm glad that they didn't do that, because I probably would have burned down and been like, I can't do this.
Right.
And so they're like, no, we need you to come. If you want the job, it's yours. So I had a conversation with Per and Tal on the phone, Tal Blevins, and they were like, all right, great. You know, good to hear from you. They knew me because I was an intern twice already. It was like I was already kind of vetted. I had gone to multiple E3s and then I've said in the past that like my favorite part of the hiring process was, so Fox owned IGN at the time. And so you still had to go through like the pipeline to be like, let's talk to the recruiter. They're going to ask you a bunch of questions, tell you the salary and all of that. And I've mentioned this before, but my dad, or our dad, instilled in us, he's like, when I told him, he's like, that's great. Do you know you're going to get drug tested? You know?
Oh, yes.
And I'm like, well, you're going to like where this story goes, Dagan. I'm like, oh, you're right. He's like, you're going to fail your drug test, you know? And I'm like, that's a good point. So on so with the recruiter, I was like, so what's the situation with like drug testing and stuff? And the woman laughed literally and was like, we don't drug test. We would never be able to hire anyone.
Love it.
And I was like, oh yeah, I'm coming over, you know? And so that was like such a happy moment for me. I was like, it was so serendipitous. It required a major change. You have to remember, like, I left Boston after that in like 2.5 weeks. Like, I was like,
was that
bye.
fast? Holy shit.
Like, just totally changed my whole life. How to go and basically drop out of grad school before I even started. Revoke, get my TA position revoked, all these different things that I was doing. Like, it all happened very quickly. And a lot of that was honestly driven by the fact that like I was with my college girlfriend at the time, and we had really just broken up, and I was like, I got to get out of here. And that was literally a huge part of it too.
Sure. That makes sense. Yeah.
And then I'm so glad, Dustin, that you brought up your pup because, and we have our Frisk, magnet or sticker on our fridge that you guys have sent us at some point.
And my Frisk mug today too.
Oh, excellent.
Oh, represent.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Oh, that's cool. I love that.
Rush is my best friend, and I needed him so badly when I got him. It was like insane. And it makes me sad. Like, it brings tears to my eyes. Like, that was like probably the worst period of my entire life. That early 2020 had nothing to do with COVID, just a lot of emotional things and relationship stuff, and just really it was a really horrifying situation. Even in my medicated state, I was still like in horrible shape. And so in my previous relationship, like, one of the positives, you draw positives, negatives, and I guess a lot of neutral stuff out of your different relationship experiences and stuff. And there's lots of negative and neutral things to say, of course, but one of the positive things to say is I fell in love with dogs because I dated this particular girl. And specifically, I fell in love with her Boston Terrier. And when we had broken up, I was horrified saying goodbye to the dog because we were like really close. She was always with me, and for several years,
Yeah.
And then we're never gonna see each other again. And I was grateful for that experience, though it was painful because I never was anti-dog. I just was like, oh, dog's cool. Here, I'll give you a little pet. Hey, little buddy, kind of. But I came to love them so much more intimately than that. And through my experience with Lola, and I knew I wanted to get my own Boston as like a legacy of that, because it was that breed, and it was her and all of that really set me on that course. And the reality about Bostons is that, really, depending on where you are, it's a pretty rare breed of dog. Like, there's not a lot of them. It's a new breed of dog. It's like 150 years old or so. The first American breed of dog. And
is that right?
Yeah, it is. It's the first.
I never knew
it's
that.
the first American breed, like fully developed American breed, acknowledged by the Kennel Association or whatever that's.
Snazzy.
And it's all about Bostons for me. Like, I just love them when I see them, when I see pictures of them, when I see like random one in the wild. I'm like, oh my God. And it is and by the way, other people that own Bostons, it's a cult. Like, it is a cult. We've been stopped on the street walking ours and be like, oh my God, we own Bostons too. And they'll like be on their like knees, like petting them. And we're like, yes. I understand completely. But it was hard so I was living at my mom's in Virginia, waiting to get my house, and obviously in like the worst shape of my life. My mom's like mega worried about me too. It was really convenient for me to be with my old Italian mom, during this time, feeding me and caring for me. I admit I was in such bad shape. One night in the middle of the night, I woke Mom up to talk to her, and she was just always down. She's just a great person like that. And I was having a really hard time finding a Boston like breeder in the area, or because again, people want like French bulldogs, and they want golden retrievers, and they want fucking huskies and all that kind of stuff. And it's cool. I mean, they're all great. I don't know who you are out there. I don't know if you even listen to the show anymore, but someone messaged me on Patreon, because I must have brought it up or whatever. And they were like, there's this breeder in North Carolina that does Bostons. Like, here's the information. And I had already tried many times to get in touch with these different like Boston breeders. And I even gave money to like a Boston Rescue to try to like jump the line and stuff like that. And it wasn't happening for me. And I just really, really wanted a Boston so badly. And so I got in touch with this woman in North Carolina, and I think I told Dagan, it's interesting. They are a dog breeder. They're dog breeders on the side, but they're bail bondsmen, and they raise like different kinds of dogs. And they had a group of Bostons, and there was only one left. I actually had wanted a girl Boston. Girls are just generally in some ways easier to deal with, girl dogs, than boy dogs. And being the first time like solo owner of a dog, I was like, maybe I'd want the more easy mode for now. But all they had was this one pup who they named, what was Brutus was his name. They give them their own little puppy names.
That's a great name.
Yeah.
And pictures of him, I'm like, I'll take him. I'll absolutely take him. And was on the phone with the woman and sent her the money and like, the down payment for him. And then I remember being so nervous that something was going to go wrong in between, because I claimed him at like 3 weeks or something like that, 4 weeks. And when you can go get him like 7.5 weeks. And honestly, I mean, this is sad, but it's true. I was like, what if they find out, like, what if they Google my name and read about me, and not that I did anything wrong, but just based on the image of me, or what if they have a person that offers them more money or whatever. But it all went totally fine. And early in COVID, we drove down to North Carolina to pick up Rush. And I was totally elated. I needed him so bad. Like, I needed a companion. And it's so cute because, like, he's big for a Boston. He's 32 pounds or so. It's a really big Boston. And, you know, our other one, Treble, is like half that size and full grown. And he's imprinted with like the way I would treat him as a puppy, or like because I would always have him like up on my chest and always just cuddling with him. And, you know, he's still cuddling, even though he's huge. We call it having a sesh. Or having a session. I'll usually lay in my recliner or like in bed, and he comes up and wraps his paws around my neck and puts his face like right into my beard and like his like top of his head and like nuzzles into me and just like, you know, like gets his pets or whatever. And he only does it with me, and it's so cute. And I'm like, it's so funny because it was just because I would place him on my chest when I was playing games when he was just a little puppy, and then he grew and grew and grew and grew until he couldn't sit there anymore. So that's like a recent random happy memory of mine is getting the Rush pup. And now, yeah, I don't know, man. I'll be so aghast, you know, when the time comes. Knock on wood. And like, I just hope he lives a good long life. Like, I hope I have one of the dogs that lives to like 15 or 16 or something. And
yeah,
like,
you should have a good time.
Course, yeah.
You know, that's my hope. So we try to take good care of him. Like, we bring him to the vet often for his checkups and like his shots, and he has insurance, and
that's all you could do.
Same thing with Treble. And like, you know, we got him knee surgery, you know, like he fucked up his knee, and like, you know, we get their dental stuff worked or whatever. Just anything we could do to abate nature taking its course. They're such good dogs, you know, and who isn't a good dog? I mean, come on, man. You know, I love dogs so much there. So I've been going on. I'm sorry. I've been pontificating.
Well, Colin, I totally relate to the anxiety of, is something going to happen? Because that day that I mentioned about that we went to Sea Frisk, when we were there, the lady had mentioned that, oh, that's my daughter's favorite, and she kind of wanted to keep her, but I'm telling her no. So like the car, that's why we called as soon as possible. We're like, okay, we gotta lock this in. And so even though it wasn't weeks like for your situation, we immediately went, bought like a crate, bought the stuff we needed, and we were back like 3 hours later because we were like, we don't want to risk this woman's daughter being like, no, we're actually gonna keep her. And yeah, it's funny just thinking about, because with like, I'm sure you feel this way with Rush too, is that it was kind of random. You had someone reach out to you and you weren't necessarily looking, and it was like, well, this ended up being the absolute amazing, like the perfect dog for me. How did this happen?
Who are you? Are you out there? Like, do you still listen? I wish Patreon DMs are so bad. Like, you can't. Oh yeah. If I could just search them or something, it would be no problem finding it. But I have no idea where to look. I'd love to get in touch with you, and because the reality is that and people are like, well, why would you be worried about things? It's like, one of the things that I was worried about, frankly, is that because everyone's like, Colin's if you read like the bad parts of the internet about me, it's like, Colin's a racist, Colin's a bigot. It's like, the people that we got the dogs from are black. You know, that was one of the reasons why I was like, it's not true. Like, you know, if you have to you're almost like playing the mental thing of like, please just don't search my name or like care or give me the benefit of the doubt or make the connection or whatever. I'm not the person that could. That's why it sucks. You know, that kind of defamation or whatever, like, you know, the things you have to think about. I was so concerned because I was like, this is too good to be true. I'm in such a bad way right now. Like, of course the rug's going to get pulled out from under me. Of course it will, you know? But it didn't. And in fact, we got Treble from the same breeders. So.
Oh, that's right.
Nice.
Yeah, that's right. So it came kind of full circle.
Yeah, they're cousins.
I mean, that thing that Dustin's saying, like that bonding with a pet, like if you walk in and you have pick of the litter, or at least you have a choice, or if you go into a pound and there are options, like that bonding that happens, you don't want to be in defiance of that, because that's a very real thing. Like, you'll click with one of those animals, you know. I'm assuming the same thing could happen. I never got cats in that way. You know, we always kind of went and had one, you know, I guess They were either gifts, which I talked about on a recent show, or, they were bred, it was bred for us. Pick a breeder and it's like, okay, this ragdoll cat is going to be yours. You're going to get the first female or whatever. So it was kind of like a different thing. But that whole thing of clicking there is a very human thing going on, even though it's only human on one side, So it's interesting. Kyle, I love hearing all that. Your Kocher's memory from like the aughts when you guys had your reunion and you got to sit down with the boys. And I love that one. That one's really special to me because it's kind of proof that you can go home again, at least for a little while.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I went home for and I slept over that night too. Like it was funny. Like it was the whole, you can go home again. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, that's it. It's full proof of that. And the fact that like all your special, warm, formative memories, you could resolve it. There was a resolution. You could put an end to it. It came full circle. And as Kyle knows, the Kocher family lives on in posterity with the Moriartys because, Kyle, you'll remember in basketball, that old two-handed underhand squat shot of just like putting up the basketball like that is the honorary Grandma Kocher shot.
Right, that's right.
So we call that Grandma Kocher to this day. So the Kochers
did she shoot like that? Like, is that where we got it from, or did they?
No, it was just a grandma shot, and we put Kocher on the end of it.
Okay, yeah, nice, yeah, Grandma. Because I was gonna say, like, she. I remember she passed away in the early '90s, but she was like putzing around. She was a nice old lady.
She was still going.
Yeah, she was a nice old woman.
All right. I don't remember her that well, but I remember, for some reason we honored her with the Grandma Kocher shot, which has been said as recently as a week ago over here.
Like your kids, do your kids say it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. We passed the baton.
You're starting something like this is, we were talking about like, the hot dog and the vagina, story. Like, where did that start? You might have been starting a new name that in like 420. It's like, what does that even... Oh, it's they used to get together at 420 in Santa Cruz and smoke weed. I love it. It's like,
I love it.
No one cares. Anyway.
But listen, I love this topic. I feel like I could talk about it all day. Locke, I mean, I have a very early memory. It's strange because I always suspect this memory is kind of a combination of a collection of memories from the same period. But I just, for some reason, remember it as one thing. And again, it's a little surreal, and it's very 1970s. So I'm looking at three people that never even saw that decade. And I suspect a lot of our listeners never saw the 70s either, you son of a bitches. But anyway, so I'll take you back. I'll transport you back to the 70s. I'll treat you to a little 1970s flavor. I have this memory. It's very vivid. So like avocado and rust-colored furniture, brown shag carpet, sort of like wood paneled walls, very dark. It had to be that first house that me and our eldest sister Dana were born in. It was a little 2-bedroom cape, and I only lived there until I was 4. And then, as Colin said, we moved out east and got the bigger house, new house, and everything. So it was inside that house. I don't know why this is, but I remember the soundtrack was Stevie Wonder's "Isn't She Lovely," playing from, I don't know, I'm guessing an 8-track at that point, and watching Sesame Street. Now, this had to be, I couldn't have been any older than 2, let's say, remembering this, right? Sesame Street was already like, what we know of Sesame Street was very colorful. You had the animated segments, you had the puppets, but there was one segment on the show, I've talked about this before, that I was kind of afraid of, but I couldn't look away. And you guys could look it up on YouTube. It's this really strange segment with a black background and a snake puppet named Sammy the Snake. And he wasn't a puppet controlled by a puppeteer the conventional way with a hand up the puppet. It was a puppet controlled to be, it was a striped snake. I think he was green and purple, but I could be remembering wrong. He might be orange and yellow. And he was controlled with like invisible levers and strings. And so maybe by 1 or 2 puppeteers, and he sang this song about how S stood for snake, and he was Sammy the Snake, and he could form the letter S with his body. And it was horrifying.
Green and purple, by the way.
Green and purple, okay. So, and he was just scary looking. Like, he looked a little bit sinister. But he was the type of thing, if he came on, I was kind of frozen in place and I had to watch it. But I didn't really like it. So I have this memory of sitting on the floor watching that. And for some reason, it just got stuck in my brain. The only other memory I have, I couldn't have been much older than this. Maybe I was 3. And again, it's those weird things like, why did my mind select this memory to hold on to? It's so mysterious, and it's very random. I'm outside. I guess it's fairly warm out. I remember myself in just being like in a shirt and a diaper, but I don't know that for sure. And I'm shimmying under a fence, like a little farm fence. And I have a little green and white toy garbage truck. I remember it was like a Buddy L little toy truck. Buddy L was like a proxy of Tonka. I don't know if it's still around, but it was very 80s. Buddy L made these toy trucks. And I had this green and white toy garbage truck that I loved. And I do remember it. I carried it everywhere. And it was one of those things that just got relegated to the toy box when I got a little older. So this thing definitely existed when I was little. And I just remember sitting in the grass and playing with this toy truck. The weird thing about it is not, what makes that special is not so much that memory, but why that memory? I could have remembered anything. But for some reason, my mind just held on to that, which is, it's one of those things I don't remember sometimes what I did yesterday, but I remember playing with that little garbage truck in the grass, which is so strange. And every time that Stevie Wonder song comes on, I'll tell somebody within earshot, like, that's the first song I remember. Like, that's my earliest memory of music. And it's usually my kids, and they're usually like, you told us this 20 times. It's so important. I could do a podcast and say these things 20 times to you guys because I have a captive audience. I have, for my happiest memories, I'm a lucky dude. Like, I have a lot. So when Locke sent us the email, I was just like, just whatever comes to your head first. Like, what is your authentic happiest memories? And it's interesting. I mean, Dustin makes a good point about wedding memories because that's going to be like the go-to answer, especially if your spouse is within earshot, that type of thing. But I'll tell you why my wedding day was so special in the moment, because there's a lot of reasons. And I think it comes down to a payoff, right? Because now I'll take you back June 2002. So this year it'll be 22 years. We've been married. Helene and I have been together almost 30 years, married for almost 22. But this wedding day in June of 2002, over 2 decades ago, I think it was so special for a couple of different reasons. But Helene is, if you know my wife, she's a big planner. Like, every detail of this wedding was lovingly curated by her months, maybe over a year in advance. So the flowers, the food, the venue, the music, the guest list, the favors, every single, like Colin and Micah just went through not very long ago, 6 months ago, very similar thing. And she was very involved in every aspect of it. It meant so much to her, the dress and the bridesmaids get-ups and all that kind of thing. And to a T had this thing all planned out. And my biggest fear, even being a much younger man, was like, holy shit, like, this entire thing, all this effort, all this money, all this TLC could be just ruined by rain. Like, you don't know. That's the thing about a wedding day. Like, it could all come crashing down. And if it rained, it would have been fine. You know what I mean? We had a beautiful outdoor wedding, a very bucolic setting. It was at a place called the Pearl S. Buck House in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, like suburban Philly. It's basically a beautiful grounds, and has a very like northeastern feel to it. It looked like a movie wedding. It really did. And it was really beautiful, and it played out. Everything came to pass that day. The weather was beautiful. But you know what I remember about it? I remember I definitely imparted this wisdom to Colin right before he got married. It said, it's going to go super fast. So just really savor it and be in the moment, even if that means just kind of getting clear of everybody and taking a breath and exhaling for 30 seconds. Like, really try to soak it in and enjoy it. I remember what I loved about that day primarily was just having all the people that were the most important to me there in one place. It was my family, all the friends that I loved, everybody celebrating and being there for Helene and I, and most of the people coming from pretty far away. You know what I mean? From New York or from down south. Some people flew in. I had friends from all over the place come. My wedding party, I think my wedding party probably represented 6 or 7 different states. So it was really cool to see that outpouring of love. And that's really what came down to, was the fact of, it was a payoff for Helene, who I care deeply about. It's like, oh my God, I want this day to be special because of how important it is to me, of course, but really to her. I want the fruits of her labor to be paid off. And it was. And just having everybody there to celebrate and enjoy that day. And you know what? It did go fast. And I was very sure, like I was super, super, it was really important for me to savor it. And I did. I took that time to really soak it in and to really kind of like just enjoy it. You know what I mean? Because you're on your wedding day, Colin knows, because it's fresh in his mind, like you're getting whisked all over the place. You got the photographer, they're doing stuff with you, the DJ and your music guys kind of planning the proceedings, and they're kind of, you're involved in everything. You got speeches, you got the meal, you got the cake. So it's this very curated thing, and you're the star of the show. So I mean, it's kind of hard to take that time to just be like, all right, I'm just gonna enjoy this for a minute. And I remember it. I mean, I have so many, again, like it's like sometimes it's hard for me to remember what I did last week, but that wedding day, June 22nd, it was, of 2002. A lot of twos. That's why it's easy to remember. Super, super cool. And so I have to send that one up as one of my happiest memories again, because it worked out so beautifully. Like I felt so blessed. Like it could have went wrong. That's the thing about a wedding day. For all that money and all that effort, it could go sideways real fast, and everything just kind of worked out. So that was a really happy memory and a relief. I mean, that's the thing. You got to get this feeling of relief of like, all right, thank God. Thank God. And it's like thinking about, I know a lot of people get divorced and remarried and stuff. I couldn't even imagine the stress of doing that again. It would be like, oh man, once is enough.
Yeah,
so
totally. I agree. Yeah, it's a one-time thing.
You know what I mean? Like that, just for that is like, and then I have one memory that came right to my mind about this day. And the more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, man, this was like one of the coolest days you've ever had. And, there's things I'm not going to talk about, like both my kids being born and of course how special those days were, but I feel like those are obvious ones. But I have a random day and I could trace it back to March of being 17 years old. So this was March of 1991, I guess. And it was just a day of skateboarding. Everybody that listens to my shows knows how much skateboarding meant to me, especially when I was younger. And it had to be March of that year, because April, just a month later, it could have been weeks later, is when I seriously broke my arm. And I compound fractured my arm skating. I was in the hospital for 4 or 5 days. I had to have surgery. And from that moment on, I didn't really miss a beat in terms of skateboarding. I kept going. But seriously, from that injury onward, I was always operating at a much more limited percentage. Like I was always skating at like 70% output, because I really couldn't risk hurting my arm. It was my right arm. It was my drawing arm. It was like a year out from graduating high school and going to art school. So as the surgeon made very clear to me, I remember his name was Shlomo Pentowski. And he was like, dude, I know I remember him sitting me down post-op in the room with my dad and telling me these exact words. He's like, Dagan, I know I'm making an enemy here, but you have to stop skateboarding. Like you can't keep going, because if you hurt your arm again, you might not have the mobility in your fingers, to be an artist. I know you want to be an animator. I remember him saying those exact words, like, I know I'm making an enemy here. And I remember being upset because he's saying it not only to me, but my dad's in the room. So I know my parents are going to try to make every effort to curb my skateboarding, right? But this one day that was this happy memory preceded that by a matter of weeks, where and skateboarders will know what I'm talking about, but I guess anybody who's really into anything will know. Like it was a random spring day. I remember it was just starting to get warm out. I was skating with a couple of my buds. We were, going, like we were in a town of Sayville on Long Island where we usually skated. and I was just hitting on all cylinders. Like, I don't know if anybody plays a sport where maybe you play baseball and you go 5 for 5, you know what I mean, with 3 runs driven in or something. It was like the skateboarding equivalent of that. It was like I could do no wrong. Everything I was doing was it was the most effortless I ever felt on a skateboard. And it was just like that. I guess the equivalent of like a runner's high, right? It was just like I could do no wrong on this thing. And I remember just getting more and more brash with it. Like, all right, let me try this. And that worked. And let me try this. And back then, we didn't have Instagram. We didn't have social media. So the barometer for skateboarding, especially outside of California where it was less popular, was the skate videos that came out on VHS. So we would get skateboard videos from whatever company, New Deal or H Street or World Industries or whatever. And we would see what the pros were getting up to. But the thing was, those were probably always a matter of months behind, because by the time they were filmed and edited and distributed, we were already getting it pretty late. So we were always like 6 months. I always felt like that era, the early 90s, we were like 6 months behind whatever the top pros were doing. And I remember I had this feeling of like, you're not far. You're right there with the skate videos. So you're like 6 months out from like whatever you're seeing the output of the best pros doing. And it was right after that. And you know, like, I don't know that skateboarding ever came naturally to me, but I put in so much blood, sweat, and tears that I was getting pretty good. You know, it was commitment. It really was more commitment with me. It was everything. I kind of lived and died with skateboarding. The sun rose with skateboarding for me. And that day, it was like, holy shit, like this could be a thing. Like, I'm not saying I could have even went pro. It's like really hard to go pro now. But back then, it probably wasn't even tangible that I was going to go pro, but I could have gotten some sponsors. Maybe I could have got flowed some product. Things could have happened barring that injury. Right. And that one day was such a happy memory of like, wow, this feels as effortless and as fun as it ever felt. Like, I'll always cherish that day. And I lament the injury a little bit, but if you just kind of embrace that, like, everything happens for a reason thing, it was like I wasn't meant to stay skateboarding. You know, I was meant to go on and be an animator and not risk it and not get hurt. I mean, I remember this was long enough ago in the early 90s where I came out of the hospital and they put the old school plaster cast on my arm, the white old school cast. Now, the vinyl casts were already a thing, but the injury was so bad and the healing was so, I guess the healing was such that they needed to put me in an elbow cast, even though it was a forearm injury, because they really wanted me to not have a lot of mobility, at least for those first weeks. And then eventually they put me in the forearm cast, you know, and I got to pick the vinyl color and the wrapping, and it's not that much different than it is today. But even with, let's say I was in that initial plaster cast, that big mummy cast for the first 2 or 3 weeks, I remember being out of the hospital for like 3 days. My parents were like, they were both working at that time. And they were, you know, basically laid down the law. Like, you're not allowed to leave the house. You're not allowed to go skate. And I was like, all right, fine. And I remember sitting, playing Super Nintendo, watching anime videos, you know, watching my OAVs and being like, I want to skate. And my friend Ronan, I'll never forget this, picked me up in his pickup truck. He was like kind of our go-to filmer at that time, you know, the big shoulder mounted Uncle Cam type of thing. He took me filming, and I filmed with that big plaster cast on my arm. Not only was I skating well enough to film. I remember skating this gap. I remember first skating and doing this gap, doing kickflips out of the back of his pickup truck over this gap. So I was already skating enough to get hurt. And my train of thought was like, I'm going to do this now with this cast, because if I fall on it, it's armor. You know what I mean? So, and that was the moment I knew, like, I would never stop skateboarding. Like, you would have to cut my legs off. Like, it was never going to happen, you know, type of thing. And my parents were mad, but even my parents gave in after a while. I think they kind of like eventually embraced, like, all right, we just can't stop this guy from skateboarding, you know. But it was that day in March in spring where it was like, it could have went very differently. And skateboarding was feeling like a reasonable pursuit, you know, not just for fun. I would have always kept at it for fun. Even if I was shitty at skateboarding, I would have done it because I loved it so much. but it was like that feeling of like, wow, like I'm getting rewarded for all this hard work. I'm finally good at something, because I wasn't good at anything. I really wasn't. You know, every sport I tried, sucked at it. Skateboarding was feeling like, wow, like this could be something I could get a little bit recognized for. I wouldn't have had a pro model probably or anything like that, but it was going in that direction. And that was the last day I remember where skateboarding was like, I could skate at 100% capacity for me. You know what I mean? I couldn't skate like a insert pro here, but I was skating up to the best of my ability. And every day after that for years was, I was operating at a limited capacity. So it was that last sort of official day of skateboarding for me that was like one of my happiest memories, because it was just so fun, dude. So fun. I don't think I've ever talked about that memory before, so it was cool to get an opportunity to get that out.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wholesome.
Very cool, man. Very cool topic. What do you think? Do you guys feel satisfied? Locke, do you feel satisfied? Did we do your thing justice?
Yeah, it was exactly what I hoped it would be. Just have you guys tell some wholesome stories, which I can edit to make horrible. So it was awesome. It was awesome. You those were beautiful stories. I love hearing those. They make me feel happy. You guys make me want to have a dog. I used to grow up with dogs. I always had dogs until I moved away from home. And then my dad got a little bit older and then he couldn't have dogs anymore. But there was a moment last year. I had new neighbors in the apartments where I live. I had new neighbors and they had 2 pit bulls. But pit bulls in Belgium, they're not really allowed. Like they're pretty much illegal because I guess they bite little kids often. I don't know if that's true, but that's what the law says.
It's very contentious in the United States about if they should be illegal.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So they just got a new pit bull puppy from like this breeder somewhere, and they asked me like, oh, they have more puppies. Do you want one? But then I figured, well, no, because the pit bull with my cat, that's not going to go well. But then I was thinking like, well, maybe I can get another dog. But then because I live alone, so I wouldn't be able to. Not that I go anywhere anyway, but I wouldn't be able to go anywhere anymore, and that wouldn't be fair towards the dog. And I would have to ask somebody to take care of him while I'm gone. So I didn't do it, but I kind of regret it because I've always wanted a dog because I love my cat. She's amazing. I love her so much. But like you said, the relationship with a dog is different than with a cat. My cat, I love her. She's awesome. She makes me laugh every day, but she's also very standoffish. Like they come to you when they want to, but otherwise
that's
you
a
can
cat
just
thing.
You can fuck off and then they'll be happier. So a dog, yeah, I'd really love one, but maybe when my life is a little bit more stable later on, because it sounds amazing, especially when I hear Colin's story when he was like not that I'm feeling horrible right now, but I really do think, and people have told me too that when my dad passed away, they told me too, like get a dog because that really gets rid, or not gets rid, but helps you cope with grief too. So yeah, that sounds like a wonderful idea one day. But great stories. I loved all of them. Wonderful.
I mean, Locke, you know what's funny? I mean, Colin and I, it's almost the opposite to you. You grew up with dogs. We weren't allowed to have dogs growing up. So it was almost like the floodgates opening, like we're finally allowed to have a dog. This is going to be amazing.
Nice.
But it must be hard for people that grew up with dogs and you have to not have that experience for a little while, right? Yeah. You want to get back to, not only do you know you're capable of having a dog, which I would argue not everybody's capable of being a good
That's also true.
dog parent,
totally
right? But you must miss that.
Yeah, definitely. We also, because we had everything. We have cats, we had dogs, we had birds. I remember we had a cat, and until I was 16, she was older than me, which was very annoying. So she got to 17 or 18, I think. So my entire childhood, that cat was older than me and took dominance. I guess.
Big brother.
Yeah. But our dogs, we used to get those. I don't know what they're called in English. Bernese mountain dogs. Is that the right word?
Yeah, that's right.
They don't grow old. I think they only get to like 6, 7, or 8, which is extremely young. So I remember as a little kid, my parents would just always get these Burmese mountain dog, which was awesome. And I loved them so much, but they would pass away after 6, 7, 8 years. And then, of course, as a kid, you're filled with so much grief when a pet passes away because you don't really get it. And then, of course, we always had multiple dogs. We always had 2 or 3 dogs. So, of course, the other 2 are still there. But then you start to realize that that's going to happen to them as well. So it becomes very sad. But dogs are amazing. You guys are
yeah,
lucky,
that's the plight with the big dog, like the Great Burmese. The Great Dane is another one.
Yeah.
Like they're just cursed with short lifespans for some reason.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if it has to do with their size and the way that just it stresses their organs and stuff. It must be something with that, right?
Yeah, it's also just breeding, I guess. There's so many dogs that just get bred wrong, I guess, or at least in my country. I don't know how it is in the US. Maybe it's better where you guys live. But I was looking at dogs not that long ago, I think like a year ago before I moved into this place. And I found this breeder, and then everybody kept warning me, like, no, don't buy there. And then I just figured, well, okay, maybe this is not such a good idea. There's so many breeders here who are not doing a great job and whose dogs like are sick and are dying. So I don't know how to find a good one either. Like there's no solution here.
Yeah, that's tough too, because it's like you could do word of mouth, you could explore online and look at like whatever, if everybody's thumbs upping the breeder and make sure they get good reviews, but you're still taking a shot. It's still a little bit of a shot in the dark.
Yeah.
You know, as Colin knows too.
Yeah.
You know, with breeders and stuff. So
yeah, you just have to. We ended up finding good people, but we didn't. You know, we were pointed in that right direction. If you're out there, you know, get in touch because I would like to talk to you. But I wonder if you even listen or even hear these things. I don't know. I wish I was more mindful at that time. But yeah, the searching in the DMs is not going to happen. You know, Dave, what's important about the dogs too? What's funny is that I never. This is a nature versus nurture thing. I think humans have a natural inclination towards dogs. We kind of co-evolved in some way, or at least we subsumed them and then helped them evolve away from wolves and towards these various breeds of dogs. But I never even conceptualized having a dog as a child. Like I knew that wasn't I was a non-starter, like inherently, and so I just never took to them. It was never even something I wanted. I never wanted to be like, oh, I wish I could have a dog. I didn't care.
Yeah, that's
it was weird. And even living with different dogs throughout time, like in college and in my days with Greg with Portillo, it's like I liked those dogs, but I wasn't like how I am with dogs now, where I'm attracted towards them, like when they're around. You know, it's like, oh, what is this dog doing? What's your name?
See, I like you weren't getting your hopes up like me. Like I would check in with mom and dad growing up because I knew it wasn't a possibility. They were just way too picky with the house. In retrospect, I couldn't really see them with dogs. They just weren't dog people. You know, mom had a dog growing up at one point when she got a little older. I don't think dad ever had a dog. Maybe he had a dog at his firehouse briefly, but they just weren't dog people. But I would check in like every so often and see if there was any hope. And it was, my hopes were quickly dashed. And then it was like, all right, I'll check it again in another 3 years. So it's kind of cool that you just didn't let your hopes build up.
I just had I just didn't even take to them or care. They were just a thing some people had. They were around. I wasn't scared of them. I didn't dislike them. Just wasn't inclined towards them. And that it's funny, like that armor needed to get kind of chipped off over time. Because even in college, Pablo had a dog and I lived with a dog with Greg for 6 years, and even take care of him a lot, feed him, walk him and all that kind of stuff. But it was more of like and what's funny is just how each dog, it really was its own personality, which is so cute.
Oh,
so
it's like a person.
Yeah, it's incredible. Rush and Treble are the same way. They're ridiculous. I don't even know where to begin with them. But, Rush is obsessed with mom, which is funny. You talk about them with dogs. Like Rush is obsessed with mom. Obsessed with, except with her.
They both love dad too, right?
Yeah, we wonder if that's because, like, does dad have like a smell that is like, do they like, are they tuned in to be like, this is one of our our owner's people or something?
Does he smell like beef?
Beef, yeah, beef. Like just like your individual scent. Everyone puts off a dog will recognize you just by scent. So like, is there some sort of association in those scents between relatives?
Yeah.
We have a theory about that with Frisk. Frisk loves one of my best friends, Brandon, which you guys will meet this coming weekend at Sacred 300. And I think Colin, you've met him before, but Brandon's brother, they live in the same apartment. Well, they do now. But one time we were walking Frisk and we saw Brandon's brother and we were like, hey, Cam, what's up? And Frisk ran to Cam and like was happy. And then something like she started to smell him and something clicked and suddenly she didn't like him. Like she was barking at him and was mad. And our only theory is that she thought that it was Brandon initially by smell, but then was like, something's a little different here. So it might be.
Yeah, she was upset because she was like, this is a doppelganger. It's not right. It's not right. Get away. Yeah. With mom, we can't say the word grandma. because that's what we call mom to the dogs, because they fucking, especially Rush, freaks out. Like Rush,
cool.
When I lived with mom is when I had Rush for his first few months or first couple months, and mom used to always have him when I was sleeping because I always slept weird hours. So they imprinted in some way. Anyway.
Yeah, she's the de facto dog sitter. So she's the one next to you and Micah that the dogs tend to spend the most time with.
Yeah, that's right.
So she'd be that would make total sense.
Who's taking the dogs for Sacred 300? If your mom's
so our Uncle Mike and our cousin Jamie, who's his daughter, have this person who watches their dogs when they go away. She's just a local woman, and she stays at your house and like just watches your dogs and does whatever, feeds them, hangs out with them. And so we had her for Boston, and we're going to have her this previous time. The problem is that we have a wedding we're all going to in South Carolina for our cousin, and in April, and so they got her first. My uncle and cousin, which is their right. I think they have the first right of refusal, in my opinion, because they put us on to them. So that's fine. So we're going with like another who we think is trusted person who does something similar. So we'll have to, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Kyle, now this person, we're going long. I don't want to stay on this too much longer, but I have a question. This person, I like the fact that they dog sit at your own house, so the dogs could just be comfortable.
Right. We don't know how they would do it at kennel. Like we would definitely want them to be together, but they're not. It's not like Lola, where we were in a city and we were constantly encountering tons of people and tons of interested people and dogs and all. And like we have dogs in the neighborhood and stuff, but they're not. And they have this weird politics with each other, the dogs. Like some dogs like each other, some dogs don't.
They really do.
It's very funny and very weird.
There's like a hierarchy. Yeah, dogs don't like to be fish out of water. I think it took Kiki like 2 years to get acclimated to the shore house. And we would go down there a lot. It was like, this is going to be your other house. Like, get used to it. She finally did. But this person that comes in now, do they also kind of represent as a house sitter, or are they just kind of like, we're not even getting into the house, we're not responsible?
Yeah. We don't even have, there's nothing for them to do. Like, maybe if our pool was open or something, we would have something to do. But
makes sense.
Yeah. So no, it's not even that. And it's surprisingly cheap. We pay her way more than her rate because we feel like it's just too good. Yeah. And the dogs seem to like her and stuff. So that's what we do. I don't know that we would. It's lame. It's like dog parent thing, but it's like, I don't think I would leave them unattended with someone I didn't know. Like, I don't think I'd be like, all right, you're going to stay at the kennel for a few days. It's like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. And we did that with Lola, but I just don't think these dogs are built for that. Like they're imprinted differently.
Sure. Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. I never had to. We have our mother-in-law who refuses to let Kiki go to a kennel. She's never gone to the kennel because my mother-in-law is like, that's like the other grandkid. It's like with mom. Yeah, grandmas are special in that equation too. Well, Locke, I loved it. Thank you for that. I think I'm going to have the Moriarty bros bring up the rear. So Dust, if you're okay with it, if you're cool, I'd like to kick it over to you. You have a fun one for us today.
I'm glad you guys are taking the rear. I appreciate that. So yeah, my topic is this considered topic plagiarism? Maybe. I don't know, because of what I did, I had a few, but I consulted the document.
The document's great, isn't it? Shout out. Yeah,
the document's great. I know you said this, Colin.
Yeah,
it's very funny to see the repeat topics. Mm-hmm. Like, it's like, how does this? There was more than I thought when I was really diving into it last night. I was like, damn. So
it's hard. I don't remember when we used to do the Game Over Greggy show. I do not remember it being this hard. Like, something in me has snapped where like it's tough. It's harder. It's hard for me because I don't want to talk about it. I can't talk about a lot of the things I want to talk about. It would be much easier for me if I could really lean into the things I want to talk about, but I can't. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, you got to too. Like, I always try to keep in mind, like, who's the lineup, who's going to be good for certain topics and stuff like that. So my topic is an echo of one of Dagan's previous topics, which was the movies that made us cry. So I want to go in the opposite direction and talk about the movies that make us laugh. And I know Lockmort is a big movie lover, so I wanted to have that topic for him while he's here. But I asked you guys 3 questions, and you can take this any way you want, of course. But my 3 questions were to have ready your overall favorite, a recent favorite, and an underrated comedy film. So I guess I'll kick us off here. And I just want to say overall, it's weird that I feel like growing up, we primarily watched comedy movies. And I feel like something has changed. I don't know if it's me. It's probably partially me and probably partially the film industry too. It's just that I feel like there aren't these huge, big comedy movies that really like take the population by force anymore. In fact, I was thinking the last time I thought of a comedy movie that it felt like everyone really needed to see, and it was so big, was like The Hangover or something when I was in high school. And sure, there's been plenty of good comedy movies since then, but something has definitely changed. And I'm not really sure what that is. And I'm nowhere near as into movies as I used to be, but I was thinking about how I think primarily now I tend to gravitate more towards TV for comedy. I don't know whether that's, and I think regular stories, this is the case too, but there's this idea of being able to layer jokes on top of each other. Think of a show like The Office, which it's kind of, we joke about this like sacred symbols, that by the end of The Office, if you haven't seen everything, there's so many jokes upon jokes, and knowing these characters and stuff like that layer on top of each other. And it's just not something you can necessarily do in comedy movies. But despite that, growing up, my dad was the one who always, he jokes now because we'll try to get him to watch a new movie. And he does, but he's often just says, I would rather just watch the movies that I love, that I've always loved, because I still enjoy them just as much. And when I watch a new movie, it's like a not a risk, but maybe I won't like it. Then I could have watched one of my favorites. So growing up, of course, like Mel Brooks movies were huge for us. Spaceballs, Men in Tights, stuff like that. And movies like, The Wedding Singer, some Adam Sandler stuff. And these were very core to our lives. And I know you guys are the same way. That's like, we quote these movies all the time. Sometimes these movies get quoted and you don't even acknowledge or think about the movie just because it's become such a big part of your vernacular at that point. But I'll go ahead and get into my three answers for that I asked you guys. And
what were the categories again? Remind me of the categories.
They were overall favorite,
yeah,
a recent favorite,
okay,
which I left vague, so you can determine whether it's recent or not for yourself. And then an underrated,
okay,
comedy film.
Sure.
My overall favorite, and some of you listeners will know this out there because I've talked about this movie, has to be So I Married an Axe Murder with Mike Myers. I could have put this for underrated as well, but it's a movie that he did in the 90s after Wayne's World. So it was like after Wayne's World, before Austin Powers. And this movie has such a big legacy for the Furmans specifically, in that my dad and his friend watched this movie once a week at the drive-in the summer it came out in 1993. And so that tradition has remained in our family that every summer we open summer with So I Married an Axe Murder. So all I'm saying is, if you guys want to do a knockback topic at some point, I'm going to demand to be on it. I've not really pulled my weight here in that way before, but I'm going to lay down the law. But So I Married an Axe Murder, overall favorite. Underrated, this is one that Chris and I talk about a lot, is UHF, which is the Weird Al movie that he did, that he plays a character where he just inherited basically from his uncle a TV station, a UHF station that's failing. So of course the programming turns into very Weird Al centric type shows. Like there's like all these commercials in it. One of them is Gandhi 2, which Gandhi then is tired of being peaceful, and he's like beating up guys in the alleyway and like pulling out a machine gun. There's a lot of great stuff, and it's got some surprising appearances in it, like Michael Richards as from Seinfeld, of course, being the role of Stanley Spadowski, the janitor who ends up becoming a TV sensation. The other one for underrated, I don't know if you guys have seen this movie, Three Amigos.
Oh yeah,
this was an HBO movie with Martin Short, Chevy Chase, and there's one more. I can't remember. Steve Martin. Yeah, of course. And this is one that we had on all the time. Like at least once a month growing up, we would watch Three Amigos. I watched it recently for the first time in a few years, and I love going back to one of these movies that you've seen countless times, and you go back, and it's particularly fun if it's been 10 years plus, especially because a lot of these movies I watched when I was a kid, and then you grow up and you're like, oh man, this was a lot more racy than I realized when I was a kid. And then recent favorite. So this comes back to what I was saying earlier, in that I just feel like I haven't seen many comedies recently. So I originally wrote this down, but realized it's, I think, over 10 years old. And that's What We Do in the Shadows, which is a movie about vampires living in the modern age. And it has Jermaine Clements from Flight of the Conchords in it. And the other guy that's in it, I can't remember his name. He directed Thor.
Taika Waititi.
Yeah, right.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So we've revisited this movie many, many times. But yeah, it's over 10 years old now. And so it's kind of sad thinking that, comedy movies were such a big part of my life, and now kind of seems like they died out. I mean, obviously there's a lot of different aspects you can go into as far as Hollywood, and every movie needs to be this giant cinematic, expensive, whether it's something, and don't get me wrong, I love Dune 2 and Oppenheimer and movies like that. They're great, but a lot of Marvel stuff and Star Wars too, that kind of these smaller, lower budget movies don't necessarily have the same audience that they used to. So I know you guys have talked about movies a lot on Knockback, your comedy movies that you've gone over, but I want to get down into very specific. You got to pick some choices here. But Locke, you're our guest here. I want to know your take on this as the movie. You're one of the few people, you and Jimmy are always the two that are like, you got to watch this. You got to watch this. Like, maybe.
Well,
sometimes I do.
I hate when people recommend me things. It annoys me because what if you're wrong?
Mm-hmm. That's why I've saved my recommendations for you, Colin, like very sparingly.
Yeah, keep your powder dry. I appreciate when people keep their powder dry. Then I really pay attention to them. You're not the boy who cried wolf,
right.
You should try to play Divinity Original Sin 2. You'll love that one.
Yeah. I actually tried to play that game, and it was too much reading, which is why Baldur's Gate.
You don't like reading.
No reading in gaming. But Locke, what are you thinking here?
Well, it's very funny that you brought up What We Do in the Shadows, because did you know it has a show? I just watched it like a week ago, all 5 seasons.
There's 5 seasons?
Amazing. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know it went that long.
It's fucking amazing. It's just as good. Well, maybe not just as good as the movie, but it's very good. It's like The Office, basically. The Office with vampires. It's very funny. I don't know where it aired. I guess on FX, I think.
Yeah.
But it was if you like the movie, you'll definitely like the show. It's basically the same thing.
My main thing that I watched the first few episodes of the show, and I think I should have kept going because they kind of just retread a lot of the movie.
They do.
And I really like Jermaine Clement, and he's not in it. But yeah, I didn't know it went for 5 seasons. That's crazy.
Well, it's funny because I had the exact same thing as you. I watched the first season when it came out like 4 or 5 years ago, and I figured, well, this is not the movie. I'm not going to finish this. But then a couple of weeks ago, I went back and I watched season 2, and I figured, oh, wow, this is actually kind of fun. And then it kept getting funnier and funnier the more you watch, like The Office, basically.
Yeah.
Because if you watch The Office season 1, you also think like, I'm not sure about this. But then once you get to know the characters, it becomes way better and better. So yeah, if you like the movie, definitely watch the show there.
Does it have the werewolves in it?
It doesn't. It does, but only in a couple of episodes. Like they're not like the main focus of the movie, of the show.
For Dagan and Colin, there in the movie, there's this other crew, because there's the vampire crew that you follow, but there's another crew that's werewolves, but they're very like reformed. They're straight laced, and so they have this thing where like they don't swear. They try to have like a support group, and he's like, "We're werewolves, not swear wolves." But
that's pretty good.
And eventually, there's a big climactic moment with them, of course, between vampires and werewolves. But it's a very funny and well written movie. I maybe just gotta check out the show. Yeah,
maybe just start at season 2, because season 1, you're right. Season 1 wasn't really great, but highly recommend it. But to answer your topic or your question, I grew up in the 90s, and in the 90s we had all sorts of comedy movies in the theater, which doesn't really exist anymore. Like we had a lot of slapstick movies, like The Naked Gun, or a Scary Movie, which was basically just.
How do we
Scream.
feel about Naked Gun coming back with Liam Neeson? I actually totally dig it. To be honest,
really?
Yeah, because I think he's funny. Like I circulated on Last Stand's Twitter page this kind of like clip from something I had never seen before, where he's
Life is Short.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
Right.
Like, this is so funny. Like he's got a Robert De Niro quality to him, where he's known and really goes into this certain pocket and serious stuff, but is clearly a funny person and understands humor. And I want to see more of that. Crack him open. You know, good shit.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
If they let him loose, because I don't know who writes it. Do you know? Or
no, I don't know. I only saw that it was coming
up.
back with him. I have no idea who's. And even if I did, I probably wouldn't even know who they were at this point. So.
Because it kind of hinges on that. Because he could be great, like in that Ricky Gervais short you posted. But if it's it depends.
We're going to do some situational comedy.
That show is awesome. Life is Short. That's about. Have you ever heard of it?
No, I had no idea what it was. No,
it's so great. It's basically a what's the correct term? I don't want to. It's about a little person. Is that how?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so it's about a little person. A little person actor in the UK who Warwick Davis from Star Wars, and he's out of a job and he gets divorced, and he basically goes to Ricky Gervais every week to ask him for advice. And then you get these famous actors like Liam Neeson or Johnny Depp who basically make fools of themselves. But it's really great. It's only 6 episodes, very short, very British, but it's fantastic, so funny. So that's one. But again, to answer your question, sorry. So we had these slapstick movies like Scream, which Scary Movie, which was basically Scream, or Dumb and Dumber, The Mask.
Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah,
One of
these
the best.
fantastic Jim Carrey movies.
Liar. There's a
Liar. Yeah, it's another great one. So those movies were super fun, but you don't really see those anymore these days. Like they don't really exist anymore, which is a shame. But we also had like the absurd movies like Anchorman or Team America, even with the puppets, which I personally loved, or Austin Powers. And then you had the wholesome comedies like Mrs. Doubtfire or School of Rock or the Pixar movies. We had those too. But then you had the smart comedies, and those were the ones that I really liked, like Fargo or what else is there? The Big Lebowski, of course. And then my favorite from them, which is my most underrated pick for you, is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh, yeah.
Which is one of my favorite movies of all time. I wouldn't call it underrated, really, but it never gets mentioned anymore.
Underappreciated, maybe.
Underappreciated, yeah. Yeah, that's a better term for it. I love that movie. It's based on Homer's Odyssey. George Clooney escapes from prison. I think it takes place in the 40s in the US, or maybe even before that.
A little
30s,
earlier,
20s. Yeah. And he escapes from prison and tries to get back to his wife, but it's very much in line of Fargo or The Big Lebowski, very Coen Brothers-esque. It follows the basic premise of the story. So he tries to get home, but he gets stopped by all these weird characters, like the Cyclops is in there, played by John Goodman. And there's all these weird characters that he has to interact with. And then he finally gets home. Well, I won't spoil the ending, of course. But that movie was so smart to me. And the music in that movie was so amazing, too. The soundtrack of that movie, a pretty original soundtrack.
It's the Man of Constant Sorrows, right? That he sings. They sing in the.
Oh, right. That's
yes.
right. Oh,
yes.
It's so good, dude.
Yes. Fantastic song. So that movie I love. I watch it at least once a year. I still have the music on my definitive playlist, which I play when I go anywhere. I love that movie so much. But then in the 90s, we also had these banned movies, or movies that are banned now, because you already brought them up, like the Adam Sandler movies, right? Like The Waterboy. I don't think we'll see that one ever again.
That was a rough one. Yeah.
Or Big Daddy, or Little
Big Daddy's a lot better than that. You know, Big Daddy's not in the top echelon of Sandler movies, but I would say it's in the middle. It's good. It's like with Mr. Deeds.
Yeah.
And some of that other stuff.
He's
that's really
moved on
funny.
to drama and stayed there. Adam Sandler, which he's wonderful at, but he's not going back, which is weird.
Well, he did that Netflix movie. What's it called?
Uncut Gems.
Uncut Gems, dude.
Yes, yeah.
Dude, it's so good.
Amazing. Yeah.
Shout out the Safdie brothers. That movie, I've seen that movie 20 times. That's how addicted I am to it.
I had to turn that movie off. I was watching with Holly and she's I can't do it. And it's not that it's too scary. It's just it's designed to make you uncomfortable the entire time. Yeah. It's 100%. Amazing.
So good.
I had to jump in. You mentioned like movies that can't exist anymore. Do you guys remember that movie The Ringer with Johnny Knoxville?
I remember it. I never saw it, but I remember it.
I don't know this one.
He pretends to be special needs so he can enter the Special Olympics. Yeah, it's awesome.
That's funny as hell. That sounds fun. Is it good?
Dude, it's amazing, and it's very respectful too. It's funny because he's there and he's trying to sneak in, and so there's all the other people with Down syndrome, but they immediately know that he's not. Like it's clear that they're like, you're not one of us. And I haven't seen it in many years, but it's one of those movies that sounds so terribly offensive. Like, how did it even exist? But then you watch it and it's like, man, that was awesome. Really good.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, we were talking about Big Daddy, right? Because you did you like it or you didn't?
No, I
like
do.
it?
I think Big Daddy's funny. It's just when there are certain movies he did like that and 50 First Dates and others where they become kind of cutesy and infringe on Sandler's amazing ability to be majorly inappropriate, you know? So I just think that there are different levels of his movies. Like Mr. Deeds, which is, I guess, a remake, actually, although I didn't know that at the time, is hysterical. Like that movie is fucking hysterical. Smells like hashish. Yeah, there's some. I saw that in the theater with Allie, actually. That was a good one. But yeah, of course, like you're talking about the stuff from the 90s, I think would be stronger.
Yeah, and the reason I brought up Big Daddy, because I watched it recently again, but there's so many uses of the I got to be careful again. What you call the bad word for gay people, I guess. Okay, that word gets used all the time, and being gay is like an insult in that movie. So I guess that can't be used anymore either. Or if you go back way further, the Mel Brooks movies, like Blazing Saddles. Amazing,
dude!
Fantastic.
Slapshot's the same way. Do you know the movie Slapshot, the hockey movie from the 70s?
Movie.
We got to do that at some point. That movie's fucking hysterical, but it is so inappropriate. There's a scene where, have you seen it, Dustin? Slapshot?
No.
Oh my God! It's really wonderful. Do you guys know the Chiefs? Like the jersey. It's like you can look it up if you want. So it's a hockey jersey. It says Chiefs on it in blue, yellow, and white. And it's this fictional team from this team Slapshot. It's like a big thing. You'll always see people at hockey games in Chiefs jerseys. But there's like a joke in the beginning. It's about a minor league hockey team, like this down and out minor league hockey team. It's fucking awesome. And in the beginning, they're doing like some local talent fashion show for like the local community. And this guy comes out and he says like, I can't stand this. I look like and like he says the F word. Like it's like one of the first jokes in the film. And I'm like, man, you couldn't get away with that today. No. Even if it would be it funny or not, it's just a different way of talking. True. So, yeah. Oh, you guys got to see Slapshot. Oh my God.
Good shit. I think it's free on Amazon.
It's really good. I'm telling you, don't have to like or even understand hockey to think it's fucking hysterical.
It's Paul Newman.
Yeah, Paul Newman. Right.
Dude, it's so good.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's like the captain of the team and like the captain coach of the team.
Is it like a funny Mighty Ducks?
Yeah, it's about like this minor league team in Canada that has like this shitty owner, and the owner is kind of like fucking around trying. It's almost like Major League, if you know that movie, which is about like the kind of the owners kind of trying to get the team sold and moved, and like it's a similar thing where like they just don't give a fuck about these guys, and they're just kind of shitty and down and out. And the Hanson brothers are the famous thing from the movie, which are like the goons.
Iconic.
They're like brothers, and they just fucking destroy people. It's hysterical. It's very, very funny.
Nice.
Anyway.
That sounds cool. Well, we also had like the American Pie movies, of course, like the raunchy teenage movies, which don't get made anymore and now we come to my recent favorite. Because a couple of months ago, I saw this new Jennifer Lawrence movie called No Hard Feelings, which was amazing to me. I loved it. I laughed so hard. It's basically the plot of the movie. I don't know how they got her to star in it, but it's basically a family has or a mom and a dad have like a son who's not really good with women, and he's going off to college, but they want him to to get laid first because he's never been laid before. So they hire her to basically date their son and to do the job with him. So of course everything goes wrong, and there's also a lot of heart in the movie. Yeah, it really caught me by surprise because I thought that
I saw like posters or trailers or something for it, like people circulating online. I think because it was an unusual casting for her.
Yeah. Dude, there's one scene in there. Maybe it's a slight spoiler, but it's nothing to do with the plot. But there's one. Well, maybe it's a good ad for the movie. There's one scene in there where she's like completely naked on the beach, and she just starts fighting with people, but like really like punching, like completely naked. I was like, what? How is this possible? This is like an Oscar winner. But I read interviews with her afterwards, and she said like, no, the script was so funny, I had no problem doing that. So there's a lot of slapstick in the movie too. It's just like basically like American Pie again, but just better and more heartfelt, more wholesome. So that's a great one I saw recently, which I highly recommend. But then there's also a couple of movies I've seen recently that I don't think were meant to be funny, but were hysterical to me, like The Rise of Skywalker.
You're not wrong.
I thought that was one of the funniest. Yeah, exactly. So many cool memes.
Is that the one where Leia comes back to life in space, or is that the one before that?
That's the second of the new.
That's Return of the Jedi. Or is it?
No, it's what is it called?
The Last Jedi.
Last Jedi.
I
tried to block it out.
That I actually LOL'd when I saw that for the first time.
Yeah, those movies. Yeah, oh god.
But
the sentence I laughed at was somehow Palpatine returned. That was to me was that one of the funniest movie lines I've ever heard. It made no sense whatsoever, that whole movie. But anyway, that was one I really laughed at. But then my favorite comedy of all time is from 2016, and it's called The Nice Guys. I don't know if you guys ever heard of this movie
yet.
It's directed by Shane Black, who also made Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I think he directed one of the Iron Man movies. I think he wrote on Lethal Weapon. I'm not entirely sure about this, but I think he did on one of the Lethal Weapons anyway. But it takes place in the 70s in LA, and it stars Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe, two actors who you normally wouldn't directly associate with comedy. And Ryan Gosling plays a private detective, and Russell Crowe plays an enforcer, and they basically team up to find this missing girl who's gone missing, and they get hired by her mother, I think, to find her, and then everything goes wrong, of course, and people start dying around them. But the thing that made that movie so incredibly funny to me is that I didn't know it was a comedy. I went to see it, and I knew nothing about this movie, so I thought it was a serious movie, especially with that cast. And the very first scene, or one of the very first scenes of the movie, is like Ryan Gosling as a private investigator trying to break into an apartment complex or a house or something. And he does what they do in every movie, right? Like he wraps like some bandages around his hand to punch open the window to open the lock. So he does that. He wraps his hand, he punches the window, opens the lock, takes his hand out, and then his wrist starts bleeding because he didn't wrap the bandages right. And then he faints because he can't take blood, and then the ambulance has to come to take him away. So it's very dumb comedy, but it's so well done. It's so fun. It's so well worked out. Keith David is also in it, I think.
Oh, I love him so much.
That would get Chris's attention.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the whole movie is just such a joy to watch. It's also not too long. It's like 2 hours, like movies used to be. Kim Basinger is in it too.
Oh, wow.
Like
that's unexpected.
Yeah, that was really unexpected. Well, maybe I spoiled it. No. She's. It's not a surprise. Look, she's just in there. So yeah, that movie really caught me by surprise, and that is, I've watched it so many times since, because I was thinking when you brought up this topic, I could easily pick like Blazing Saddles. I've seen that a million times, or Monty Python and the Holy Grail, of course. I've also seen that one a million times. But I think The Nice Guys incorporates everything that I love about comedies. It's like slapstick, it's funny, it's smart, it's has perfect dialogue, it has the perfect cast, it has great music, a great story. So that basically encapsulates everything that I love about comedies. So yeah, my favorite is The Nice Guys.
Wow, dude, I have to watch this. And can I just tell, for everybody out there, go ahead and try to hate Ryan Gosling.
Yeah,
you can't.
He's awesome.
It's impossible.
Awesome.
You can't do it, right? Not even can. I'm not even saying Drive. I know that's what sold me on Ryan Gosling. It was like you went from The Notebook to Drive. I mean, just watch Drive. After that, you can't hit Blue Valentine, right?
Yeah.
But dude, he just could do everything. And he's so likable. I feel like he's one of those dudes that guys just want to dislike. And it's just not possible. He's so
just too damn
utterly
attractive,
appealing.
you know?
That's
Oh,
it.
he's hot.
Talented.
That too.
He's as hot as the day is long. But he's so, he's got that charisma and he's got that humility, right? There's just like a humility there. This guy's like on top of the world right now.
He was also great in Blade Runner, which was impossible.
Yes.
Almost,
Dude,
but
he was so
fantastic
good in
in
that.
that.
So
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, well said, Locke. Listen, before we turn it over to Colin, I just want to say, first of all, Locke, love you shouting out the Coens with Oh Brother. That's a great movie. Seriously, one of the great movies. I understand that they finally taken on Blood Meridian for the big screen, which is going to be decidedly very unfunny. But I'm happy it's in their hands, apparently.
Yeah.
Rumor has it. But you guys were curious about the Naked Gun movie, so I'll just read you this. Paramount, I don't know how I feel about that. We're about a year and a half away from release, July 18th, 2025. Of course, Liam Neeson. The currently untitled project will be directed and executive produced by Akiva Schaffer, who co-wrote the draft script alongside Dan Greger and Doug Mand, reprising their partnership from the Emmy-winning film Chippendale Rescue Rangers, which I haven't seen, but I understand is very good.
Yeah,
It is
that's a
pretty
good
good.
one.
Yeah.
Seth MacFarlane of
Oh.
Family Guy fame and Erica Hughes are producing via their company Fuzzy Door. So
Okay,
it sounds
that's
like
good.
it's in relatively good hands.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
great. That's great host production. Appreciate that.
Oh, thank you, my friend. This is Kyle. This is what I do.
Yeah. No, it's wonderful.
Now, what do you think, Kyle? I'm going to turn this one over to you. I'll bring up the rear as I often do.
Yeah, I know you like that.
I really do.
You're on one today, huh? I don't know that I can answer this in the paradigm of Dustin's, with overall recent and underrated, just because I don't know if I've seen any recent comedy really at all.
Mine was 10 years old. So
I guess like the comedy, and I should look up, I always get them confused. Yeah. So this is not the one I'm thinking of. Yeah. The movie Dirty Grandpa is probably the most recent comedy that I saw. And that's probably from 2016, maybe. So I guess that's what I would say. That movie is so it goes into what I think you were saying, Locke, specifically. Like, people don't seem to make these kinds of movies anymore. And I have an affinity for American Pie too. That American Pie, I feel like is from my age, the seminal teen movie for my generation.
Yeah.
It was out when we were in high school. It was incredibly meaningful to us. I also think the second one's really good too. American Wedding, the third one's kind of bleak, but actually the fourth one, when they the reunion one, is hysterical. And I went and saw that in the theater actually, because I wanted to support them. But yeah, shout out to American Pie, but I wouldn't put these on my list. But yeah, if I have to have a recent one, it would be Bad Grandpa, just because I was surprised. I don't know. I was surprised by how funny people still are if you're just willing to kind of go in the weeds and look. Now, this isn't I'm looking here on Wikipedia, and Dirty Grandpa made $100 million at the box office, so it wasn't like a horrible film or anything. People were going and seeing it, but I feel like you have to kind of go more into the gaps and find stupid things like this. The thing that I guess I've found over and over again is that things that seem like they're going to be stupid are often really funny, and this is one of them. I often said that 40-Year-Old Virgin's a great example of a movie where I'm like, that sounds like the stupidest fucking movie that I have ever heard of in my entire life, and I just didn't see it until it came. I saw it in DVD in college, and I was like, it was just like obviously iconic movie, and the same thing with Hot Tub Time Machine or Pineapple Express or all these super bad over and over again. I feel like movies are funny if you just kind of lean into them, and now you just have to go into the gaps to find them more. But I would say that that's probably the newest comedy I've seen, so I'm totally disconnected from that as well. Well, in this paradigm, then I'll say overall, The Big Lebowski is probably my favorite comedy. This is a movie that Dagan and I are connected to deeply. Dagan showed it to me when I was in high school, and I fell in love with it. Mr. Treehorn treats objects like women, man. It's an endlessly quotable movie. I think it's super.
movie.
It's super fun. It's ridiculous. The performances are amazing. You know, there are certain movies Dagan and I we'll just say the lines just apropos of nothing, and they're not all funny movies. Like one of the movies we quote the most is The Patriot, which is not supposed to be a comedy, but we quote it all of the time. And this is another movie where I quote this movie and I don't think people even realize it. Like whenever a phone rings around me, I always say "phone's ringing, dude." like almost like it's a Pavlovian sort of thing. Like the phone rings and I'm like, "Phone's ringing, dude." Always from The Big Lebowski, but I love it. I love the movie. I think it's pretty much perfect, and epic era Tara Reid as well. So
yeah, seriously, yeah. Well said.
I was saying to Micah a while ago, I was like, I was in love with Tara Reid when I was a kid, and obviously American Pie she was like my crush, like my Hollywood crush, probably through. What was that? Taraverse? What was that show called? Remember that when she did that? Wasn't it Tara Reid that did that?
I just
random
recently read that she did that. I didn't even know it.
And then she kind of fell off. But then she came back for that American Reunion, and
that's right.
She had that fuzzy kind of period.
No, definitely.
So did you see Josie and the Pussycats that she was in?
I didn't.
No, I never saw the live action.
I should have. That actually might have been a better underrated pick that we watched all the time. That has really awesome, fun music from the guy from Founts of Wayne that died from COVID. He did the music for that, so it has like kind of a pop punk soundtrack to it. It shockingly really good and really thoughtful critique on modern society as well. You wouldn't expect it from that movie, but a lot like there's like this whole subplot about like subliminal advertising affecting the youth and stuff, but it's a great one. Highly recommend it.
Nice.
And then, so yeah, shout out to Lebowski. I mean, that's if you haven't, one of the random people out there that haven't seen it, you really should. It's
a masterpiece.
Yeah, it really is. It really is a masterpiece. It's just a perfect movie, and
even the music is amazing in that movie too.
There's not a wasted scene. There's not a wasted frame.
It's the Coen brothers, dude. Yeah. Again, like there's masters of that craft. And it could be so funny.
I'm not Mr. Lebowski. You're Mr. Lebowski. I'm the dude. Another thing that I say to Dagan sometimes is, Mr. Lebowski asked me to repeat that. These are just random lines that are not even like the funny lines from the movie. But
why does Jeff Bridges never get the accolade of one of the best actors of all time? Because he certainly is, but you never see him on that short list, and that he's totally overlooked for that. Because he could do comedy, he could do, he could do drama, he could do the more serious roles, but he is so good in that.
The dude is one of the great comedic roles ever.
Unbelievable.
And everyone around him, everyone's John Goodman. Oh my God, don't even get me started on John Goodman, dude, because he's incredible. He's incredible. I guess underrated. This is a weird answer, but I do feel like it is fading a little bit on how funny it is. And I think it's because the people involved with it are either dead or not very well liked anymore. But I just want to give a shout out to Caddyshack, which is still this foundational, super fucking funny, really witty movie that was so... The people on the movie were so funny and so much in their prime that the movie was basically rewritten as they went to accommodate them being so funny. And Rodney Dangerfield is a legendary character in my mind. And Caddyshack's old, it's from 1980. I've been listening a lot. I bring him up sometimes, Rick Beato, the music YouTuber. I really like him. And he brings up how the reality is that music, like most music, is just going to fade into, and he talks about how a lot of rock music, unless it's like the legendary rock music, is really just going to become like Mozart level irrelevant at some point. And it's not that Mozart's irrelevant; it's that you have to go to a classical concert for. Who the fuck do you know anyone that listens to classical music? Like, really? Do you? Like, I probably maybe do in my periphery, and that's what he's saying. And I feel like the same thing is going to happen with a lot of these movies, and even movies that were icons. Like, look at Slapshot. Like, I know for a fact that Slapshot's considered one of the great sports comedies of all time, and you guys have not even seen it. That's not on you. It's that it's old, and you have this kind of mountain of content that you have to sift through, and every once in a while you dip your hand deeper into the mountain before your time and pull some things out. But how much could you really do? And I don't want Caddyshack to fall into that hole, because it's truly iconic and really one of the great quotable films. I love it. It's one of those movies I've seen a million times. I was originally going to say for my underrated film, Willy Wonka, just the 1971 one, just from the perspective of, I think people watch it for different reasons, and they should really watch it as a comedy. Like, lean into it being funny for adults, and it's a totally different movie in some sense. And a lot of the interstitials and weirdness about it is really aimed at you, not the kids, to which they would never understand it at all. It's clever on that really weird meta level, and it's done intentionally. So people watch it and they're like, oh, it's good for kids. It's a great story. It's very aesthetically pleasing, wonderful performances. It's a musical and the songs and all the rest, but no, dude, it's fucking funny. It's funny. It's about like horrible children, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
And like, they're dying. Like, they're fucking dying in the movie. I don't know if that's obvious or not to you. They're fucking dead. You know, like, it's very dark,
British,
and it's
very British,
and it's hysterical. And the book, the two books really that whole stuff that's based on, the doll books, I've read those as kids, and they're different. Like, this is one of those things where they changed it and made it so much better, you know? So shout out to that.
Love it. I love it. Those are all great picks. I mean, it's everything you guys are saying is just a stark reminder of how many amazing comedies there are, because I don't think I have any overlaps in my list. And you guys named some great stuff. And there's a couple of things I haven't seen. I think I'm committing a cardinal sin with having never seen UHF, first of all. I have to watch that. That keeps popping up in, I don't know what, my Netflix feed or Hulu or something. That's available to watch right now. So I have to, has that iconic poster, right? Mm-hmm. With the spiral, with Weird Al's face and stuff like that. So I have to rectify that one soon. I like this topic, Dust, because you're holding our feet to the fire, picking specific things. Yeah. I'll keep we're running pretty long. I'll keep mine brief. My overall favorites, I have a 3-way tie, which I think is acceptable because these 3 movies are all pretty different from each other. First, I have to throw in Mike Judge's Office Space. I won't say a lot. We did a knockback episode about it, but it really is one of my favorites. We already knew Mike Judge from Beavis and Butthead, but who knew he could be so amazing at live action as well?
Did you watch Silicon Valley?
Space. What'd you say?
Did you watch Silicon Valley, the show he did?
You know what? I haven't. That's a backlog for me. That's a serious one, actually. Because he was the head. He was the showrunner, wasn't he?
I believe so, yes.
I think it was his project. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or he was heavily involved. But yeah, no, I have to catch up on that. But yeah, there's something about the flavor of Mike Judge's humor and just the relatability of this film and everything he does. And the quotability. Again, it's almost on Lebowski levels. Like, the whole movie is so quotable.
Lumberg fucked her.
Dude, it's so good. And it's inherent 90s flavor.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it has a very specific 90s era flavor to it. And again, relatable because it came out at a time where I was going from college into the workplace. But I think anybody who's worked in any kind of office environment could relate to this movie in probably many levels, but at least on some level. Right. This movie it's so great, and it has that timelessness to it. Although it has all the trappings of the 90s with the outfits and the cars, and
there's
a young Jennifer
there's an existentialism to it, Dig, for sure.
Oh, 100%.
Like, it's a lot of comedies it's actually what makes what's that weird Napoleon Dynamite. Like, there's an existentialism to that movie too.
Absolutely. You know? Very similar.
Yeah, like just in that, like, the comedy speaks to you on a deeper level than just being funny, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
it's saying something. Like, what am I doing with my life?
Exactly.
That's the underpinnings of the whole thing. So Office Space, definitely. And we did a knockback on this one too. Greg Mottola, Seth Rogen, and Evan Goldberg's greatest contribution to film, 2007's Superbad. I mean, this is just one of my favorite comedies of all time. I think as far as like the comedy stylings of a duo, Jonah Hill and Michael Cera are so brilliant they're younger then, especially than most comedic duos that just have that chemistry. And what's so cool about that movie is that it kind of inherited the comedy baton from like the really original, irreverent comedies like the Rodney Dangerfield stuff, like Porky's, like Fast Times. And it has a little bit of that sort of American Pie flavor to it. But there's something so realistic to the comedy in American Pie. And even though I was a high school senior 15 years prior to this movie coming out, it speaks to being a high school senior in a very funny way and in a very reverent way. But there's something very real about it that you're like, yeah. And also this film, very South Cal, very SoCal, has a very specific regional sort of recognizability to it. But I grew up in New York and it felt the same exact way to be a high school senior. It was all about getting laid. And now this is kind of the hyperbolic version of that. But it's just, there's something in it. It was like the parties, what the older kids are getting up to, the way the police acted, fake IDs. It's exaggerated, but there's so much to relate to in it that, again, just timeless and already getting up there in age. This film's 15 years, 20, going to be 20 years old soon.
Yeah.
Still amazing. And yeah, dude, it speaks to a definite time. I mean, this is probably a movie I've seen 25 times. It's like one of those comfort movies. It's like, I just want to laugh. Let me watch Superbad, And then the last one tied for my overall favorite. I have to give a nod to this one for sure. It's probably one of my favorite movies of all time. And that's Christopher Guest and Rob Reiner's This Is Spinal Tap. Dude.
Oh, yeah,
I need to see that movie.
Oh my
I feel
God,
like that's one of my biggest
experiences
as a metal growing up, especially with my dad being so into metal. I can't believe I haven't seen it.
Dude, you're gonna fall over. You're gonna love it so much because we know Christopher Guest now. We know the mockumentary thing, but this movie really does blur the line between comedy and documentary. It's essentially a documentary that's just hilarious, but you could almost take it as a documentary if you didn't know any better. It's done that well. And you know what's funny about it? I discovered Christopher Guest through probably Best in Show and then came backwards to This Is Spinal Tap and Waiting for Guffman. And then, of course, going on to With a Mighty Wind and everything else that Christopher Guest does in his very specific sort of expertise over a comedy that feels, very real in that documentary thing and people that feel inherently very connected to it, sort of laughing at people that aren't laughing at themselves, that type of thing. So This Is Spinal Tap never gets old. Like you could just watch clips of it on YouTube and just have a blast with it. I mean, I might put it up there as greatest comedy of all time. It's very special. And I think it has a very specific specialness to it because it's before Christopher Guest was directing. This is really Rob Reiner's project with Christopher Guest writing and starring in it. The next projects would be his to helm as well as starring. So I kind of love that. And I'm just a huge fan of his anyway. Recent favorites, I kind of had trouble with this and then it dawned on me and I wanted to do something really recent, like within the last year. Then I thought, I'm a huge Wes Anderson fan and he had a movie that came out last year that I think went a little bit overlooked, at least for Wes Anderson, called Asteroid City. And it might be the most Wes Anderson of all the Wes Anderson movies. And it might have come out at a time where it was like, all right, we've already got 25 years of Wes Anderson. The public sentiment might have been like, we've had enough. Like we've seen enough. Like it just looks like the same thing over and over again in a new setting. But in this movie, I really liked it. Talk about a cast. Dude, the cast is so star-studded and lengthy. It would just be easier to say who's not in it. Like it's like that. There's like 50 movie stars in this film, like proper movie stars. So I don't even go off on that tangent. But there's something about, if you know Wes Anderson even a little bit, it's the visual trappings, right? It's the aesthetic, it's the color, the style, the right angles, the way every shot is so sort of curated in this OCD manner, the very distinctive art direction. But this movie made me realize again, it just kind of doubled down on the fact that there's a visual sense of humor to it too. It's not just beautiful. It's not just recognizable as Wes Anderson. There's a comedy in the way he frames a shot. And the way that relates to the writing and the characters and the story, and that it all works cohesively, I kind of love that. And like any other Wes Anderson comedy, what you're really laughing at are characters that don't realize that they're ridiculous. It's like a bunch of characters that don't realize they're cartoons, essentially. They're very earnest. They're very genuine about who they are. And that's what you're laughing at. There's a scene, like a random scene in this. Tom Hanks is in this one. And I don't want to spoil anything because it's still relatively new. Probably a lot of people probably haven't seen it. There's a scene where he's talking on the phone. And this is the other thing about Wes Anderson that I think goes overlooked, is that he puts so much unnecessary detail into the movie that's never explained. And there's a lot there. There's a lot of Easter eggs to explore, but there's so much comedy in it too. There's a scene where Tom Hanks is on the phone, and he does a lot with split screen in this movie. Very 50s, very kitsch. Tom Hanks is just talking, and he's kind of like a very Wes Anderson character, like a wealthy 50s gentleman. And he just has an old school, like pirate's musket type gun tucked into his waistline for no reason. You know what I mean? He just looks like a 50s golfer, but he's got this old gun tucked into his belt. It's like little things like that it's a visual comedy, you know? And I think everybody knows Wes Anderson is this artist. He's this brilliant cinematographer. He's got this house style that's, you know, unmistakable. And you can't copy it. It's so distinctively Wes Anderson. You could try to copy, but, you know, there are no imitators that could hold up to a Wes Anderson. But it's the comedy. It's almost like the Coen brothers. It's almost like Joel and Ethan Coen. Like, they get put as like best filmmakers of all time. But unlike a Quentin Tarantino, where he just has a cool to his films, the Coen brothers, besides being great filmmakers in probably all aspects, are just, they have an inherent comedy to their voice. And Wes Anderson has the same thing. You know, there's something really special in what he creates on screen that makes me laugh. And he's been doing that since Bottle Rocket for me. And it never really misses. Even if the movie is a little bit, his latest movie, he's pretty prolific. Even if his latest movie is a little worse than the one before, there's always a great comedy in what he does. And that's really, I think the comedy is such a big part of his vision that people forget about. You know, if you're not laughing, maybe you just don't get it. Maybe it's not for you, type of thing. So I would put Asteroid City in that sort of as a recent favorite for sure. I really enjoyed it. I want to watch it again. It's brilliant. Scarlett Johansson is so funny in that movie. You don't think about her as funny necessarily, but I would highly recommend that film. And then you could play that game of like, what movie star is going to pop up next? He usually has a lot of star-studded cast that he calls up. And if he puts everybody into the mix, it's a lot. But this one is like ridiculous. It's like he went like this with the Oscars and just put everybody in the project. It's incredible. And then for underrated, I have two. And I'm going to go with one I know I've talked about before. It's one of my favorites. It's a go-to comfort movie for me. Definitely consoled me at a very stressful moment in my life, and that's Wedding Crashers, 2005. Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson. I still think they're like one of the best comedy pairs around. And the story behind discovering this one, it was on cable. So this was 2007. So it was a couple of years after it came out in the theaters. And my wife, Helene, was in labor with our daughter, and that labor lasted over 24 hours.
Wow.
So, and I was a new dad. I was about to become a new dad, super stressed out, like flu symptoms, the whole 9 yards. She's already in labor for like 7 or 8 hours, late into the first night. And her mom finally came over to be with her upstairs, which relieved me of my duties. I went downstairs in the living room on the couch and put on Wedding Crashers, and it just chilled me out. And I still take shit for this because she was like, why weren't you there holding me and holding my head? She had the like crazy morning sickness. I think her water was about to break. Like, it was getting intense. And as the intensity grew, I was getting more and more stressed out. And my mother-in-law came and relieved me, and I went downstairs and was like laughing at Wedding Crashers, and Helene heard me, which added insult to injury. And I actually fell asleep. It comforted me enough where I fell asleep, woke up, and I think early in the morning, there were still as it turned out, 8 or 9 hours of pregnancy left. So I needed that little respite. So this movie will always have a little special place in my heart. And if you haven't seen it, it's pretty great. It has a little bit of that American Pie sort of raunchy comedy thing to it, but it's really more about these two characters, these best friends that are getting up to this mischief of crashing weddings and who they run up against, that type of thing. There's some really funny supporting cast in this. Christopher Walken's awesome in this. And just their exchanges as best friends doing this and how frustrated they get with each other. They're so good. And then I would tie that film for underrated with, I feel like a movie that not a lot of people have seen. And it's a weird one for me because I'm not necessarily a huge Jason Segel fan, but it's 2008's, I would say, Nina Stoller's masterpiece as far as directing, Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Oh,
dude,
yeah.
Movie is so funny. Have you guys seen it?
No.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
I think it's floating around on one of the subscription services. I want to say HBO or Netflix right now, but it's basically, the conceit is Jason Segel. He's like a Hollywood TV music guy, and he's going out. He's dating Kristen Bell's movie star. She's like a big TV star, and she breaks up with him. And then he goes into this deep depression and tries to take a vacation to Hawaii to get over her. But she's there like shooting a movie with her new boyfriend, like this British rock star boyfriend played by Russell Brand. And just hilarity ensues. It's such a funny movie. Jason Segel, Kristen Bell, Bill Hader's in there. He's hilarious in it. Russell Brand, Jonah Hill is in there. The beautiful Mila Kunis. She's awesome in it. And Paul Rudd. It's got a really cool supporting cast. But what's funny about this movie is that it feels a lot like Family Guy. It has this model of just cutting away to random things. And it always makes me laugh out loud, especially the first half of the movie where it's basically something playing out and it just cuts away to Jason Segel, who's in this deep depression, having just been dumped. And he's just like curled up in a fetal position on the floor, crying his eyes out. And it'll just cut away to those little moments of him being pitiful. And there's something I've never really seen a movie like that. It almost has this cartoon sensibility where it just kind of does whatever it wants to do. It's a little wild, but and continuity is a little weird. Like, you don't see a lot of feature films like that. It takes a very cartoony approach to cinema, but it's funny. Like, it's legitimately funny. I don't want to be too hard on Jason Segel. I don't generally think he's that funny, but he's so funny in this because he plays this guy who's trying to get over a breakup, but he's also kind of a weirdo. Like, he works in television music, but he's an aspiring sort of playwright and a puppeteer. And he's trying to get this musical off the ground about a sort of depressed vampire puppet. And he's super weird. He's like a weirdo in the movie, and they play that up, and it's just fucking hilarious. And of course, like, there's a budding romance with the Mila Kunis character who works at the hotel. It's very simple, but I think everybody's contribution, Russell Brand is so funny in it, playing like this cocky, but actually kind of lovable rock star who's like the new boyfriend. And he's actually very welcoming to the Jason Segel character and being very cool about the whole thing, but you kind of hate him because he's so handsome and popular and everything. So good. And I feel like a lot of people haven't seen it. I think it would be easy to overlook just in thinking about, all right, that looks weird, but it always makes me laugh out loud. I've seen it a dozen times. So that would round out my cast. So Spinal Tap, Superbad, Office Space, Asteroid City for my new one, and for my underrated, Forgetting Sarah Marshall and Wedding Crashers. If you guys have been listening to me go on and on about Wedding Crashers for probably years now. If you haven't seen that yet, you just don't care.
Well, Dagan, I'm going to watch This is Spinal Tap. It's one of those movies that
you're gonna love it. I'm jealous.
I don't even think about. I want to watch it, and so when I sit down to watch a movie, it doesn't like enter my mind at all as far as when I need to watch. So I was looking. I don't think it's on Netflix or Amazon or anything, but you can get it on AMC Plus. So that sounds like a free trial from a new account.
Do it, my friend. You've never seen any clips or anything from this?
I've seen it goes to 11 clip.
That's it. Yeah. That's one of the great clips, but there's probably 30 moments like that in the film.
Yeah.
That are just as brilliant as that. So you got plenty to look forward to. Christopher Guest is so fucking good in that movie, playing Nigel. I forget his last name, but he plays the Nigel character. Dude, so good. And it's such a great send up of like rock music, hard rock music, metal. And it's a loving send up, but it takes so many stabs at that genre of music at a time when that music was starting to get big. It's a complete roast of that whole thing.
Yeah. And
and even if you don't know that world, you just get it. Mm-hmm. You know, it's that good. It just delivers on being a documentary, but also being absolutely hilarious. There was probably a time where I thought it was real. Yeah, I wasn't sure like the first time I saw it because I didn't know that it was even a Christopher Guest thing because Rob Reiner's in it. You know, he's kind of playing the narrator or the guy following around the band. Again, Christopher Guest would go on to do a very similar thing, but under his own umbrella, it became a different thing. Spinal Tap is very, very different. It's kind of a one-off, and I think the best one.
Did you see the sequel to Forgetting Sarah Marshall?
Is there a sequel?
There is a sequel, but it's only Russell Brand's character. They take him out and they put him in. I think it's called "Get Him to the Greek." And I
didn't realize that was the same world.
Yeah, it's an unofficial sequel. So it's the same character, but then you also have Jonah Hill, who plays somebody else in that movie.
Yeah.
So it's basically about Russell Brand's character from Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
And Jonah Hill's it because Jonah Hill plays a hotel worker who's obsessed with, like, almost homosexually obsessed with Russell Brand's character.
Yeah.
Like, he's a fan, but he's definitely crossing the line. So that's hilarious, dude, to have those two just doing their own. Well, I didn't know that. I knew about that movie, but I didn't know it was connected.
Yeah, Jonah Hill plays somebody else. He plays like a movie or a music producer, I think, in that one. But Russell Brand is the same character. He's
that
the
is
same,
hilarious. Oh, I'm all over that. Yeah, it's almost like one of those movies I feel embarrassed for liking for some reason, like admitting that I like. But there's just something so weird about that movie.
It's very likable.
It's great. It's really great. Yeah, good shit. Well, Dust, that was your topic. I mean, do you feel satiated, my friend?
I'm fully satiated and ready for more of a new topic, of course.
We're kicking it over to you for the third topic today. I thought this was a good one. It's a little bit tonally, it's a little break in the action for us. And I'm interested in what everybody has to say about this. It's one of those ones that surprisingly has not come up yet. So I kick it over to you, my friend.
Yeah, I thought so too. Oh, I have the wrong email open. There it is. So I was just this comes from a funny place actually. So I guess I'll present it to you, and we can go quick. I know we're running pretty long, so we don't have to linger on this topic too long. But I was playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, which Dagan and I are doing on Knockback, and I'm playing it again for the second time. Dagan's never played it before, and I'm really enjoying it. And it's not a spoiler. I'm not spoiling anything, but in Midgar is fucking filthy. And I was noting to my wife, Micah, I was like, so we're in like the slums, like Sector 6 or Sector 5 or Sector 7. And I'm like, okay, everyone's poor and they're doing the best they can and all of this. But why do you have to live in squalor? It's very strange to me. Like if you like look around Midgar, it's like, all right, yeah, you're doing the best you can. You're down and out, but there's garbage here. You can just pick it up and get it out of your face, you know? All right. So I've been kind of laughing about this in the game, kind of just joking around about it, but I realize in our own lives, I get kind of annoyed when I see litter in a place for a long period of time or something kind of out of place. And it made me kind of just wonder if other people think about this sort of thing and if you do anything about it. So guess one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is like kind of being the change you want to see in some sense. Like in my neighborhood, I just pick things up when I see it now and throw it away. And at some point, like I don't live in a very filthy area or anything like that, but it's just like something flies out of a person's garbage can on garbage day and it'll just sit in like a ravine, or kids will throw a wrapper somewhere of like something they're eating or whatever. And these things, but then I wonder, I'm like, I live amongst a bunch of upper middle class people. Does no one else have the principle that when you see, I don't want to live in like around this sort of garbage and stuff like that. And it bothers me. And so we can take it all the way into like a deeper environmentalist stance if we want, but that really was the impetus for why I wanted to bring this up. Was I don't understand why people put up with filth and desolation around them, even if you're like you're totally down and out. You live like a fucking stealth camper in the woods. It's like, are you going to live in the garbage dump, or are you going to live in like a clean part of the woods? Like, why do we want? I see some of this footage, frankly, from certain other countries overseas, where I'm like, Jesus Christ, like what the waterways and the rivers and like everything's just fucking gross. And it's like, why are you living like this? You don't have to live like this. Like, even if you are, again, have nothing, like just why wouldn't you want to take pride in your surroundings and worry about that kind of stuff more? I find it very strange. So even in my own existence, my own kind of well-to-do existence, and I admit that, it's like, I'm still out there picking this shit up. And I wonder, if I didn't do it, would anyone do it? I guess maybe the landscapers that take care of the common areas would take care of it at some point. Just kind of bothers me. Like, why are people just throwing things away, not caring, not seeing things, and not doing anything about it, making our environments better? This goes into the whole point I've made many times about how if I were a billionaire and I had like all this money to give away, it would be totally donated to getting rid of city blight and like suburban blight, like abandoned buildings, like literally digging holes next to alongside city streets in Detroit, just dig entire holes in between these and just shove everything into these holes and cover it over as if it was never there at all, and let the earth reclaim the wood and the metal and the fucking, if it's some plastic, it's like, whatever, just get it out of here. Like, why do we want to live like this? It's crazy to me. So that's kind of where I was with the dig. I don't know if you have anything you want to say about it, but that was what was on my mind this week.
Yeah, this is a good one. I always think of not only like litter and the environment, but like that whole thing of what you're saying, I think too, that plays into it, of like urban decay. I think of like cartoonists like Robert Crumb, who kind of tied that whole crumbling suburban aesthetic into his cartoons and into his artwork on purpose. Like the way we build up this really ugly infrastructure that we don't take care of. That's, the roads are crumbling and the buildings are coming down, and garbage cans and telephone poles, and just how it's just so aesthetically unpleasing and all of that kind of stuff. I think about, when it comes to my environmental footprint / ecological footprint, whatever you want to say, it's on my mind a lot. Like bigger things, like should I drive an EV? Will I go in and take a page out of Colin's book when I get enough money and get the solar panels put on? I guess it's like a lot of things. Like to me, being cognizant of the environment and to doing my part, it doesn't hurt to make a real effort, right? It makes you feel good. Plus, it's certainly not going to hurt anything, And I'm like you, like there's something about seeing litter on the ground, whether it's one of those really hideous highways where you just see garbage lining the entire roadway for miles, or like one random piece of garbage on the ground in my neighborhood. Like there's something that really bothers me about it. And I'll go way out of my way to pick up somebody else's trash. Like watching people walk over trash is maybe the most frustrating thing in the world. And, it's not that every single piece of trash that you see was thrown out of somebody's car window brazenly. Like it could have flew out of the back of a garbage truck.
I think that's most of what's happening in my neighborhood, is like it's people just shoving too many things into their garbage cans.
It's not the Mad Men thing of leaving the entire picnic spread there for like the park workers to pick up. It's not always ill-intended, but yeah, it's something about it. Like let's do our part. Do you guys, now this, I may be dating myself. The first thing I thought of when you sent this topic was Woodsy Owl. Do you guys remember Woodsy Owl?
I don't know.
All right. So Woodsy Owl was a PSA campaign growing up in the 70s. And I guess it extended into the 80s. It's basically a guy dressed in a giant mascot owl suit, like a anthropomorphic owl. And he sang this song in between cartoons that went like this: give a hoot, don't pollute, never be a dirty bird, in the city or in the woods, help keep America looking good. Hoot, hoot.
Wow.
Very well done.
That was beautiful.
Dude, I'll never,
Beautiful.
I mean, that we were sort of indoctrinated by Woodsy Owl.
Good.
Smokey the Bear too.
Good.
If you don't know who Smokey the Bear is, I won't bore you, but Woodsy
They were
Owl.
gay lovers. Woodsy Owl and
I feel like Woodsy Owl was a little fashion forward for the 70s. People weren't giving that much of a shit yet. Like, we didn't even have recycling yet in the 70s, right? So that was a little bit ahead of its time. But that was my earliest memory of, doing your part as far as like, take a piece of litter, put it in the waste paper basket, put it in the, you're in the park and you have a soda, put it in the garbage can, that type of thing. And I do care about the environment. I think for myself, though, I don't want to be too much of a hypocrite. I think life gets so busy. A lot of people can relate to this probably, that I think this whole thing unfairly gets lower priority with me. Like, it draws the short straw. I think about how bad I am with just the simple thing of using the reusable shopping bags, which are, by the way, I have 5 of them in my trunk. I never bring them into the supermarket. I always walk out of that supermarket with countless plastic bags. And you know what? I use them to line the waste paper baskets in the bathrooms or pick up cat litter and stuff like that. So they are getting used, but wouldn't it be better just not to have them? You know what I mean? We have a basement full of reusable shopping bags. Like, I'm not exaggerating. We have 100.
throw them in the ocean. That's where they say if you throw them in the ocean, they go away.
Well, you know what? I'm interested, especially in what Locke has to say, because there are certain places that I go, like if we go down the shore and you go to Wawa for a sandwich and you don't bring in a bag, you're carrying out the sandwich in your hands. They won't even give you a bag anymore.
Yeah, that's
now, Pennsylvania is behind that.
Yeah, I was going to say that was in San Francisco 10 plus
they
years
must
ago.
have been doing, sure.
Oh my God, dude. They were militant, completely
bags.
militant about it. No bags. No, you had no option. There was no plastic bag option. Like, plastic bags are illegal, like in San Francisco. It was either you bring your own bag or you pay a tax. And I think it went up to like 50 cents per paper bag. And that was your option.
Yes. Yeah. They
always ruin everything. They start everything there and it all like the paper straws and all that kind of shit. Oh my God. I know. I went through all of it. Yeah.
It slowly makes its way across the country. Yeah. In Jersey, it is that way down, at least in our part of the South Jersey shore. Pennsylvania is always kind of slow to adopt everything, but I'm sure because it's the same people, like the Philadelphians, that's where they go to vacation. So it's going to carry over to Philly at some point. And then there are those institutions, like I think of Wegmans. No matter where you shop at a Wegmans, they charge you whatever it is, 50 cents for a paper bag, no plastic. But if you don't bring your own bags in, you get penalized by having to pay for carrying your groceries out. And again, like Wawa down in Avalon, New Jersey, if you get an armload of sandwiches for the family, you're carrying them out. You know what I mean? Like there are no bags. So it is interesting. And, again, like I am mindful. I think about it a lot. I have to put a lot of these things for myself into practice. And I just wonder, like for me, I know this isn't a larger conversation about global warming and everything, but I will tell you, as the oldest person on this panel, I've been here for 5 decades and I have seen a pretty dramatic shift in the weather. Like it's definitely a lot different. And, I'm in the basic same geographic region as I've always been, but the weather is a lot different. And paying attention to the weather in different parts of the country too, you know what I mean? Like, for instance, tornadoes were not a thing in Pennsylvania when I was growing up as a kid. You know what I mean? Now it's a thing. So what is happening and how much of that is due to, again, I don't have the science, but how much of that is due to the global warming, which is due to the pollution, which is due to the ozone layer and all of that kind of thing. So I think about it often, but I gotta kind of adopt those better practices. And I don't know how much, I think that's the thing. That's where we can't get caught up in like, well, how much of a difference can one person make? But if we're all doing that, then again, if you just adopt that philosophy of it can't hurt, you know what I mean? Do your part, do your small part, hold up your end of the bargain. If everybody is mindful, then maybe it makes a difference. Or if it doesn't, it's not going to make it any worse, if that makes sense. So that seems to be an easy enough way to think about it.
Yeah. Well said. It's funny with the global warming stuff. I'm the same way where I'm confident that the climate's clearly changing, and I'm sure it is caused at least somewhat, if not mostly, by man. There could be some natural like sun things happening. I don't know, but I think people use that stuff as a sort of example to kind of be like, well, we're not responsible for it. It's like, of course we are. I think the problem that we find ourselves in, and I think this is a salient problem, is that the developing world looks at America, which doesn't pollute. Our pollution is going down per capita substantially, and has been. And Earth in the United States is greener. There are more trees than there have been in years. And some of that, like global warming, is actually good for that if you care about that sort of thing. Carbon is food for plants, and the Earth is getting greener and greener and greener and greener as things get worse. But there's no doubt that we've had this obvious effect. And the developing world says like, well, why did you get to do this damage and get this sort of economic advantage? And now we know more and now we can't do it. And I think that's that's why when people are like, we got to do this, we got to do that, I'm like, we're not going to do anything. Unfortunately, one way or the other, because there are these two countries specifically with 1 billion people each that are like, well, we're not participating in that at all. And you either have to all be in or not. And I kind of understand their arguments. And I hate to be this like futurist kind of guy, but I am somewhat confident that in the next 25 years, we will figure out how to solve this problem with like some sort of scrubbing technology, like air scrubbing technology, or like we already know in theory how to do some things, like just like I don't know what the particular particulates are, but like spraying things in the atmosphere and doing all sorts of things. Like I know it sounds very futurist and technological and unnecessary, and it is, but since we're not going to get on the same page, and since it's true that these people are like, you're going to send us back into the Stone Age economically if we can't burn coal and use oil and stuff, it's like, all right, fair enough. We got to figure out a different solution. That's why I'm kind of like next stage in my mind. It's like, okay, it's happening. So how can we do something about it? And the solar panels are an interesting thing because, of course, this is what I say about Randian kind of politics is Ayn Rand would say, well, you get the solar panels because you want to save money on electricity. And it's like, yes, that is certainly the major driver of the solar panels. And I bought them, so it wasn't like I'm not renting them or getting them from the like I paid a lot of money for them, but now my electricity is basically free, right? And I get carbon credit stuff too, so I make money on the side on that, which is dope. But I would be lying if I didn't say that like a piece of that was like, what can I do to like remove myself from and become, I'm pretty sure, fairly carbon neutral in terms of my home and all these sorts of things. We actually make too much electricity and send it back to the electric company and make money on it.
Yeah, you have a surplus. That's
right.
Cool.
And it's going to take, probably, I think 7 years or something to like make all my money back and the panels to like break even. You basically get to write them off. So that's just a third of the cost of them right there. So it was totally worth it in that regard. And I'm on this network of trading your carbon credits because you earn carbon credits per, I guess it would be milliwatt hour created. But certainly like a motivating factor was like, I want to care for the planet. I think in the United States and I want to go to you next, Locke, because you come from such a small country with like a very monotypical like geography to it. Yeah. I feel like one of the blessings of the United States, one of the many blessings of it, and I mean this wholeheartedly, is like, it is beautiful here. Once you get out of these shitty coastal cities and some of these even internal cities, and you just look around, like Micah and I were marveling at it even just flying. And I remember my friend Chris Carl, who was the guy who actually hired me as a freelancer at IGN way back in the day, would say like, we have so much space. Like there's so much space And you look out the window and you're like 100 miles from Washington, D.C. and 150 miles from Baltimore and 200 miles from Richmond. And yet you're looking around as far as the eye can see and there's just nothing. And it's like, this is worth protecting. And I think that there's some sort of tension, political tension between what is right and what is wrong about environmentalism. And I find that so funny since it was really Republicans that were like U.S. Grant specifically and Teddy Roosevelt that were the first major environmentalists of power in the United States. And at some point they got broken off and became like this almost like liberal granola eating thing. But I'm like, it's actually something everyone kind of shares. And I don't understand why we would be blessed with such an amazing landscape and not want to protect it and not want to have like shitty shell ghost towns sitting there forever. Like, why are people allowed to build these things and then walk away from them like they never existed at all? And then we have to look at them for 200 years or something like that. Like, get rid of this shit. Bury it. Seriously. Like, I watch these YouTube videos all the time and I'm like, dude, this whole town can go. No offense. Take the 100 people that are left and relocate them and be like, this place is a blight. And it's fucking, why would you want to live amongst this? Why would you want to be in this? What does it mean to you to see this every day? To have the only house on a block?
Maybe we're doing a thing for like future tourism like they did in Greece and Rome. It's like we need
ruins of the American Empire. Yeah.
Detroit.
So anyway, Locke, where are you on this? And I guess the global warming, I mean, unless I'm ignorant, the global warming story is somewhat vital to you guys because of your sea level. And I wonder, are you guys like, what is the ultimate thing? Like, you're going to build a seawall or something? Like, how are you going to?
Well, it's not so much us; it's more so the Netherlands, so the northern parts of us. They became very well in building dams and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. You guys probably saw this on the news in the last year, but there were a lot of farmers protests in both Belgium and the Netherlands, and that was because our governments, in order to cut. What do you call it in English? Emissions?
Yeah, emissions.
Carbon. In order to cut emissions, their big plan was to shut down half of the livestock farms in Belgium and in the Netherlands. But if you look at a map of Belgium or if you look at a map of the Netherlands, I wouldn't say half, but at least a quarter of the map is green, and all that green is all farms, livestock farms or agriculture. So if you shut those people down, the whole economy of the country basically collapses, and a lot of people are out of a job. So our farmers rose up. I'm very proud of them. Our whole country is, except for the politicians. They rose up and they protested. Not that it did anything, of course, but they really showed that you can't do that as a government. Because like Colin just said, we're a tiny country. And the Netherlands is a tiny country too. And compared to some other countries with billions of people who aren't willing to do anything, our economy or our farmers shouldn't be the victims of that.
Right. It's preposterous that they would ask you to do that when those countries wouldn't do anything anyway. It doesn't matter. Like, what you're doing doesn't even matter, you know?
Right.
Exactly. Well, personally, of course, I believe global warming is real. Of course, I notice it every day because we don't have winters here anymore. We have basically two seasons. We have summer and then we have fall, and that's it. This year it snowed for the first time in like a decade, and it was gone in like 24 hours. Wow. Which is a shame because I love the winter.
It's crazy how many people are in denial about what's going on when it's so obvious, in my opinion, too. You know, and to Dagan's as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And on a more personal level, well, like you guys said, maybe it's selfish of me to say this, but I'm just one person. I live by myself. I don't drive. I don't have a car. I don't even have a license. I never fly. I don't have a farm. I recycle. If I see litter, I pick it up. I put it in the garbage bin. I do everything I can. So when I see these climate activists go into the Louvre in Paris and destroy paintings or throw stuff over them or glue themselves on the road to harass people like me.
Eco-ISIS?
Since
that's the other terrorist group that likes to destroy history?
Yeah, exactly. To like raise awareness. That pisses me off beyond belief. And I think that pisses off most people here because it's not on us, and it's not our fault that these things are happening. We do our part where we try to do as much as we possibly can. So if those people want to harass someone, go to those countries and harass the people, or not the people, harass the governments who aren't doing it. Don't harass us or harass the truckers who are trying to get to their destination, and don't glue yourself onto the road, or don't go to a sporting event and drop paint on the pool table and just expect that everyone will agree with your point, because you basically achieve the opposite. Me myself, I'm so sick of these people. If I ever see them on the street, I hope that doesn't happen, because I will kick their ass. I think I can't.
I see videos all the time of them. Yeah, like just, dude, that video I saw in the UK, of a person, because I think a lot of the paintings and things like are protected by varnish and all of that. But I saw a chick go in and take a knife to a painting,
cut it up,
and cut it up, and that can be repaired too. We know this from Baumgartner Restoration, of course. But
shout out,
wonderful YouTube channel. But it's like, when I saw that, I'd be like, dude, I'd break your fucking neck if I saw you do that in front of me. Like, our heritage, our history, like our art, irreplaceable. That's why it was so offensive what ISIS was doing in the Middle East. It's like, are you fucking nuts?
Yeah.
Like, they would, because they didn't want that history to be there. It's like, this is ancient. It's their shit is especially sad, because it's like, this is it's like, oh my God, like, this is such a catastrophe. This is a human catastrophe for our history. It bothers me that people are so flippant and think, I understand that they think it's urgent, but they're talking to the wrong audience. Yeah, the United States, as far as Western governments is concerned, like we are well below the per capita per capita carbon emission that we were like, even I think in the 40s and 50s, like in the 60s, we're doing great in the United States. But I think that people here have to understand, like, it's good for our immediate environment to do this, but from the global story, like, we can only do so much, and it's really not. You have to exert incredible control. You can imagine like some sort of futuristic sci-fi thing where there's like a global climate war where people have to be subjugated to stop using carbon and stop doing all those kinds of things. But I really just think we have to find human ingenuity, like, in order to negate it. And I think we will. Yeah.
Well, didn't they find a way to close the gap in the ozone layer?
The ozone layer is the ozone layer is fixed as far as I'm concerned. And we did fix that by stopping like certain aerosols and stuff. So like we did have an effect.
Yeah. But so it's possible. Yeah.
I think the sad thing is that there's like this latent, as I understand it, this latent thing where like, even if we stopped now, like if everyone just stopped now, there would still be like 50 years of damage, and it's just going to be compounded so much more in that. Wow. I was reading, it's not 20. They think that maybe by the end of the century, it'll be 20 feet of sea level rise at like a mid case scenario, which would obliterate like a lot of different places. So it is interesting, but I think we can only, I appreciate what you're saying about doing what you can do. Like, I just feel like everyone's kind of got to live that life as best as they can. It was what I was saying earlier about the fictional people in Midgard. It's like, why don't you pick up the garbage around you? Like, why, just because you're poor, just because you're unemployed, just because you're this, just that. It's like, why do you still have to live like this? Well, and I see that all over the world, and I'm like, I don't get it. Even in parts of our own country.
It's hopelessness. Those people don't have the hope that you have. Like, you live in a nice suburban neighborhood. I guess those people don't have the hope of ever achieving it. So they basically gave up. This is their life. So of course they want to live in a better place, I assume. And I assume people in India don't want to live next to poisonous rivers and stuff, but they don't have any hope of getting out of it. So I guess that's why they just keep polluting, because they don't know any other way. Yeah. They don't know that it can be any different.
It's a shame.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
Yeah, it is. It is a great point. Yeah.
The hopelessness, but also bandwidth, right? Like, I always think about when I see a shabby house, right? It's like that person's, it's poverty, and all of their efforts, their life revolves around just surviving. So the other thing, like painting their house or fixing their gutters that are falling off, that type of thing. It's like I always think of it, and I can't relate, thank God. I mean, I'm blessed, but that's the thing about, it's like there's only so many hours in a day. If all their attention's going to just literally surviving, then of course everything's falling down around them. That's another thing too. It's like, but I know it's like, but how do you balance that with pride, just basic human integrity, and the value of living? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure where it's a type of thing where I guess misunderstanding and relatability is at play. Because how much can we really relate if we've never been in that situation? And empathy for something that you don't fully comprehend, I guess, which is hard, So yeah, good points.
Yeah, I'll jump in.
Yeah,
here.
Dustin, jump in.
Please, Dustin.
Yeah, so I have a lot of different thoughts, just because there's kind of like the micro and the macro level, and it's funny. This is something as I've gotten older. I remember my dad complaining about, this guy down the street's got a bunch of crap in his yard. I'm like, why do you care? It's you live over here. And now as an adult, when I'm walking Frisk around, there's like a few neighbors. There's one up the road and one down that I walk by, and it's not even just trash. It's just their stuff all over the yard. Like, what are you doing? People have to drive by this. I got to walk by this. It's just there's
shout out to the
everywhere.
HOA. It would never happen in my neighborhood. Everyone makes fun of the HOA, but it would never happen.
So I understand that. And it's especially annoying right where I live. I don't know if this is the case anymore because I haven't noticed recently, but for years I live on a corner. So there, corner of two streets, and it was right where the bus stop was for the kids. These kids have no respect, just throwing their shit everywhere in my yard. And then in addition, there's, I have these bushes by the side of my house that are like perfect trash receptacles for people to just throw stuff in. Like, what are you guys doing? Because it's not, I don't notice it other place. There's something about the corner of my house that people are like, yeah, this is the dump. So I get that. And it's just annoying, cleaning up after other people. And as far as the other, the personal level stuff, this is something that Holly cares a lot about, to a point that I think is reasonable. Because I think there are ways that you can take it too far. She enjoys watching some YouTube channels that are like the zero waste people, and she'll watch and be like, oh, we should do this, but they went too far and they're reusing this like 8 times, or they only go to the grocery store that's zero waste where you have to bring biodegradable bags and stuff. Yeah. And it just it gets too crazy at that point. And I get frustrated too thinking about recycling, because some recycling is just like a total sham. Like, they're not really doing anything, especially plastic. They can only do so much with plastic. And it's just frustrating. It's like, you're putting in all this effort to recycle stuff and it makes you feel good, but really, it's really not necessarily doing anything. And that's not always the case. And I think about smaller things too, where I have a jar of peanut butter that's empty. And I think, okay, I got to wash this out significantly in order to recycle it. And it's plastic, and I don't even know what they're going to do with it. So is it worth using a few gallons of hot water and soap to wash this out and put it in the recycle bin, or should I just throw it away? That's
so interesting, because I'll be honest with you, with recycling, it's like, the reality is that they're taking your things and selling like your paper and your cardboard and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not doing very much to help them with that. Like, since I have to also pay for them. In other words, if they were like, we're going to come get your clean plastics, and I'd be like, okay. But when the peanut butter jar is empty, I get as much peanut butter out of it as I can because I want to eat it. And then I'm like, okay, into the recycling bin. Or like a ketchup bottle. It's like, okay, it's done, into the recycling bin. Because it's like, this is a service, and you need to, I'm not going to do everything for you, and then I'm going to pay you to come get it for me. It's garbage. At some point, it's just got to go. But I agree with you. I think a lot of it is a bait and switch, which is a bummer, because it makes people feel good. But yeah, you can only, I think, reuse plastic so much, and then it's kind of unusable at some point.
Right.
Right. And that's kind of the thing too, leading into the larger scale. What frustrates me sometimes is that there's a big push for personal responsibility. And I think people do need that in order to, hey, recycle, don't throw stuff on the ground, try to be eco-friendly when you can. But a lot of this also is just companies trying to save themselves money, when some of the biggest changes could be done if they weren't cheapskates about it. Chris always brings up Snapple being in a plastic bottle. It's like, dude, if it was in glass is infinitely recyclable, but it costs more. So they're just not going to do that anymore. And you don't even have the option to get it in glass or something like that. And I see this other places too. I was at Target a few weeks ago and I noticed they had an Igloo recyclable cooler that comes, it's like paper. And I get it. There are some uses where maybe you're having a party and you don't have enough coolers, this is a good option. But I'm also thinking, just buy a fucking cooler and then use it. It's going to last probably the rest of your life, as opposed to one of these recyclable ones that you go and you spend $10 every time you want to use it. Someone had to manufacture that. Someone had to ship it to Target. Then you have to drive it home. There's so many other factors involved too. And bringing up the whole idea about EVs, which I think are awesome. I'd love to own a Tesla someday. But from a environmental aspect, the infrastructure to really support them isn't actually there, because your energy, unless you're Colin that can charge it fully on solar, which is very few people by and large.
I know that I know that that's a very lucky thing. I'm not saying like that's a normal thing.
But I'm just saying in general, that power needs to be generated somehow to be put into your green car. And often it's just coming from a power plant that uses gas or coal, or it's like, okay, so you're just trading gasoline that you put directly in your car that instead it's being burned in some factory.
It's so funny you bring that up, Dustin, because I just brought that up with Micah, because Micah and I are going to buy a new car soon. She wants like a Subaru. I think she probably talked to you guys about this. Yeah. But I was saying like we could actually have an electric car and it would legitimately be like clean energy electric, because it's off the grid. It would be off the grid, or we only have to borrow a little bit of power or whatever. Because you're right. It's just like moving around these pieces on the board, but they're all just doing the same amount of damage in different ways. It's like, okay, so your coal powered electric plant is just burning and I need more megawatt hours to get it or whatever. Anyway.
Right. Yeah. And dude, there's other elements too. And I don't want to speak out of turn about stuff I don't fully know about, but electric cars require a lot of materials in order to make those batteries, and those batteries don't last forever either and need to be replaced. And those have a huge material cost too. And I don't want to undercut that. I think it's a good thing to move in that direction, but I see, different cities and governments and have this big EV push now. And they're like, all cars need to be EV by 2040 or 2050. I'm like, it's not necessarily, it looks really good and it sounds great. Yeah. Clean EV cars, no pollution from cars. It's like, dude, that pollution is just going somewhere else until you have a true clean energy source. So I feel like in some ways that the environmental movement, you could say, is co-opted by corporations and governments that want to sell you a solution that sounds really nice, that's going to make you feel like you're doing something good. But if you take a few seconds and think about it, it's like, well, we're kind of just passing the buck somewhere else. And you guys are bringing up the, America having less pollution and less pollutants into the air and stuff like that. And that's another thing that we've kind of just pushed off to another country, and that all the things that we buy are manufactured, not everything, but most of the things we buy in this country are made in other countries that don't have the same regulations. And that's why they're cheaper, is that they're just able to endlessly pollute. So yeah, we're not making the products here that pollute, but we're buying them. We're supporting them being around. And this comes down to the idea. It's like, what are you going to do? What are we going to do? There's not really that much. And so for me and my viewpoint on it, yes, there are the micro things that we can do. We can reuse things, use reusable water bottles and whatever. There's those small things. And yeah, if everyone does them, it does add up. But really, there needs to be a demand on companies and the government, which is scary to even ask them, because when the government does step in, they do stupid stuff like EV mandates that don't make any sense. So it's a very frustrating situation where I want to be environmentally conscious and focused and do my part, but I'm also just so skeptical about the push and the reasoning behind some of these companies, when really it's not us that makes the real change. They must be done on a macro level, whether companies or governments or something like that. So it's a frustrating topic. But we just, got to do what we can in order to make our small difference. I just think that there's too much guilt by companies and governments placed on the individual, where I just don't, it's not necessarily their fault.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, dude. I mean, It's funny when I think about everybody close to me in my life. Some people are really positive about trying to be proactive and do what they can and do their part. And some people in my life are deeply cynical about it. And the cynicism does make sense because a lot of it is the guesswork of perception versus what's actually effective. Like I feel like we are, like what Dustin was saying, like I feel like we're at that point where it's hard to know. But I do like that, illustrating that point of, a lot of this is really beholden to the more corporate rather than the individual. And it's not a pride thing. I just take comfort in at least doing it, knowing like, all right, maybe this isn't effective, but it's certain, again, sort of embracing, like, I guess what I'm doing isn't hurting. Like if I have, and Helene's really big on it too. Like I'll be like, if there's like a disposable smoothie cup that's halfway full, and I'm like, I don't feel like cleaning this, I try to chuck it in the garbage. She will take it out and rinse it out and put it in the recycle bin. You know what I mean? So it's my laziness and sort of that hypocritical thing too. And then my argument would be, well, is whitetail disposal are they boiling the vat of this plastic anyway type of thing? It's hard to know. I don't know.
Well, that's where my mentality is. It's like, I'm washing this plastic, or they probably just scrubbed, like they have some fucking conveyor belts doing all sorts of shit to it. It's like, I'm not cleaning the plastic, dude. Like at some point it's like, no.
Yeah, we're paying for
right. Like this is a service. You clean it.
Right.
And then you sell it. So have fun.
Yeah. I was thinking, I mentioned some of these examples of things that when you think about them, they don't actually make sense. Just the other day, Holly and I, so we went to see a movie, and then we went to Blaze Pizza, which I haven't been to in many years, but they had dairy-free cheese. So we were like, let's do it for Holly. She's lactose intolerant. I got a drink, and the lids were like these adult sippy cups, like plastic that go on top. And I think there was a little sign about how we're reducing straw usage. The lid is how you drink. And I'm looking at this lid, and because it has to have the sipping mechanism, I'm like, surely this is more plastic than a lid plus a straw than this entire thing. It makes no sense. It's just one of those things. They can say, you don't have to use straws with this. And by the way, Colin, I know you agree with me on this. Fuck paper straws.
Dude,
okay.
Eliminate them.
Yeah, I was at ground zero in California with those things. I used to literally go to places with my own straws. This is a thing that people would do there.
You really did?
Yeah, no, I did. Yeah. I was with you when I did that, right? Like, yeah, I had a box of straws in my apartment. I'd be like, we're going to the diner here. I'm bringing my own straw. I'm not fucking around with paper straws. The thing that bothers everyone about paper straws, and this is reasonable, completely reasonable, is like, I don't want to pick on Taylor Swift. I think people are really hard on her, but it's like, Taylor Swift is doing more damage to the environment than like my entire county. And if you think that me using a paper straw instead of a plastic straw is going to somehow tip the balance, you're crazy. This is what I'm saying. It's like, let's just do the things that we can really control. And I think in the United States, we've kind of, in broad strokes, I think with a lot of tax policy and good things the government did, and of course the private sector, we are per capita. If everyone polluted to the level we polluted, the earth would be a lot different than it is now. We are doing a great job, and we've beautified our country, and it's getting better, and the earth is getting greener. I have to look up the stats, but I'm pretty sure there are more trees on earth now than there were 50 years ago or 100 years ago, by a substantial amount. Like I
think that's true.
We're doing, but you have to understand too that like it loves carbon. Like all the plants love this carbon situation. Like this is what they want. The plants want this. Maybe they're engineering it.
Happening.
And then, it's like, exactly. It's like some sort of hive mind thing where they're like, yes, feed us more carbon.
There had to be a better way than paper straws, man. Whatever happened to the idea of pasta straws? This was a thing that was around. I know it's probably expensive, but this was a thing getting introduced where it was like a uncooked pasta as a straw. Probably very expensive. But that idea was kind of briefly introduced and then just seemed to vanish.
Dude, what about a straw? Where it's just made of plastic, because you can take all of the plastic straws. They're like these thin little, it's like, come on, man, like deal with put solar panels on fucking houses or put wind turbines. Wind turbines, another great thing,
Pasta straw for a warm beverage would be pretty entertaining.
Pretty gross.
Because eventually it's going to turn into a limp
It's just
pasta.
gross. I don't even want to talk about it.
Dude, I got a paper straw at a movie theater once with a icy. And immediately it was just totally flaccid, flopped over. It's like, man,
Dude, it's not good.
What are we doing here?
It's so bad. Like, they're not even coated in wax. I mean, it's like they weren't even trying. I feel like I don't see the paper straw a lot. Like, even Starbucks out here seems to be back to the plastic straw. Now, they were probably sitting on warehouse fulls of plastic straws already. But yeah, I don't know. Let me pick, I'll entertain you guys with this story because this is what I'm still trying to figure out. Years ago, Helene and I bought our first house right after we got married. Very blue collar neighborhood, which was fine. We were starting out. We were a young couple starting out, didn't have much money. And the neighborhood was very blue collar. That's all. Some people took care of their houses and some people didn't, but it was a start and we were psyched just to have our own home. And our house was also mixed in. It was a very weird neighborhood because some of the houses were built in the 60s, some in the 70s, some in the 80s. Our house was built in the late 90s. Like, it was like one of the last plots of land in there. So we were fortunate. It was a relatively new house and not the greatest neighborhood, but we were making a start of it. And there were plenty of people that you saw with dilapidated houses, unkempt yards and things, stuff, collecting in the backyard. And you could tell, like, a lot of these people, again, bandwidth, struggling, maybe trying to make ends meet, working weekends. They didn't really have the time for house upkeep. I understood that just from seeing people from afar all day, every day. But there was one house that insisted on putting the swing set in the front yard. And it was a legend because it was like, that's not even a thing of, the haves and the have-nots. That's just fucking weird.
Yeah.
Like, you had a swing set, you chose to erect it curbside instead of in your back. You clearly have a fenced-in backyard. What is going on there? That's one of the things where, like, okay, that's egregious.
HOA.
That has nothing to do with how much money you make, right? That was always a funny one. It was like, I understand this guy's siding is falling down. Maybe he doesn't have the money. He doesn't have he doesn't have the time to go out there. He's working on the weekends. This guy's just struggling to make ends meet. But the guy with the brand new swing set in the front yard was just, I was like, we probably, and you know what? I think it's still there. Once in a while, I'll jump back in that neighborhood. Colin and I almost got in a deadly car accident outside that neighborhood. Actually, years ago, we almost got sideswiped by some lady. But once in a while, I'll duck back there and just look at the houses. It's nostalgic. But I think that, if I'm not mistaken, that swing set was still in the front yard. And that's the thing about an HOA. Like, I never lived in a place with a homeowners association, but that's the kind of thing that, that's what it's for. That's the union. You know what I mean? You're not going to go above boards and put the swing set on the front lawn in Colin's neighborhood. They're not going to.
That would never. Yeah. No. People would flip out. We have entire Facebook groups and stuff and all that. I'm not in any of those things, but like, people are going crazy.
Oh, the drama.
Oh, there's a lot of drama. I just try to stay. I don't want anyone to know who I am. All right. Well, I'm satiated today, so I kick it over to you.
All right. Well, that was a good one. That was a fun one. Now, for me, many months ago, I did a topic called elevator pitch. And in that one, I asked the people on the show with me to pitch me an idea for a video game. And I said, the elevator pitch will come back. It'll have a recurrence at some point. So as I emailed to you guys, I thought I'd bring back the elevator pitch, this time for pitching me a reality TV show. Okay. So any kind of reality TV show that you guys would like to see made. Could be any idea you have. And I'll tell you where this came from me. When I was watching Mad Men during its original run, of course, a TV drama, not a reality show. But partially what I loved about that show, I loved a lot of things about it, but I love that it showed the inner workings of an advertising agency and how an advertising agency operated, which I'm fascinated by. And it occurred to me it's very adjacent to the world that I know best, which is working in an animation studio. But there are a lot of differences as well. And I was like, from that idea, the seed was planted for, wouldn't it be cool to do a reality TV show inside of an animation studio, to see the inner workings of an animation studio? I think it would be successful. And I think it would work on multiple fronts because, first of all, I think a lot of people don't understand how the sausage is made. Like, I think a lot of people really don't understand how cartoons are made. And I think they'd be pretty fascinated to find out. And then, of course, just the conventional human drama of a reality TV show, and the reason why we all watch reality TV shows for real life human drama. So, and one based inside of an animation studio would kind of operate on two fronts. So I thought it would be really cool. And an animation studio is interesting because I think I visualize sort of made for TV reality show set inside of an animation studio being a little Office Space, a little Mad Men, and then a little bit of The American, The Office, and then mix that in with a little bit of You Only Know If You Know. Like, there's no real way to describe how an animation studio is unless you know it. The closest thing I've seen to it is working in a game development studio, which I've only worked for two. They're very similar. But the animation studio is special because it's kind of your typical office setting, but on acid. You know what I mean? Like, it's, from my experience, it's a job like no other because it's such a diverse collection of people. It's often the highly educated mixed with the barely educated. You know, it's the deeply creative mashed up with the numbers crunchers all under one roof. It's the artistically talented mixed with the more conventional office personnel that you would see in any office. Secretaries, PAs, production people, accountants, stuff like that. Everybody kind of living in under one roof. And then very different levels of experience, you know, people of all ages. You know, there could be interns in their teens. And I've worked with people that were like in accounting and law divisions of animation studios easily in their 70s. So really diverse in terms of age and experience. And then kind of the dreamers filed in with the pragmatic, like everybody's mashed in together. It's an environment like I don't think exists anywhere else. So I think it would be really interesting to have such an eclectic and colorful cast of characters. And just the drama, the creativity, which I think could be pretty fascinating, that kind of deadline driven world, the stress and anxiety that goes along with that, competing for projects, and just seeing how it is on the day to day, you know, where you're working in this environment. There's a lot of different people doing different things. It's an assembly line sort of process, but also there's a lot of people inside of an animation studio that exist outside of that assembly line that are kind of on the periphery. So I always thought it would be really fun. And it actually gets to the point now where I'm surprised, especially with the sort of success and the rise of anime and just generally animation in the West, that this isn't a thing yet. You know what I mean? It's like, what? People are generally fascinated. I mean, animation has reached this thing where it's transcended from nerd culture to pop culture, I would argue, right? And I think that started probably in the 90s and just snowballed to 2024. So that would be my dream. And again, that was sort of maybe the third season of Mad Men where I realized, wow, this would be pretty cool. At first, I was probably thinking about it of like, wouldn't it be cool to see Mad Men, but in an animation studio? But then I was like, well, how about the real thing? That would be really neat. So I'll kick it over to you guys. If anybody's eager to go first, that's fine. I could pick somebody out. Just raise your hand and see if I want to see what you guys came up with for a reality TV show, because this is still a genre of television. I would argue that this is a genre of television maybe single-handedly making traditional cable television still sustainable. Now, we have all the reality drama on the subscription services too, but I think this is one of the large reasons why people are still tuning into conventional cable. Yeah, I agree. So still a big thing. And I understand the draw. I do, even though I don't go in for it a lot. I'm watching that made for HBO documentary about 90s Nickelodeon right now, centering on Dan Schneider and all that.
Oh yeah, what's that on? What is that on?
It's on HBO.
HBO, okay. Yeah, I've seen that going. I gotta watch that because that's kind of like a little bit after my Nickelodeon time, but
yeah, me too.
In a lot of that.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. Pretty fascinating. I think, did I get through the entire thing last night? I think I might have closed it out last night. It's good. Yeah. You know what? I'll pick Dustin. We'll go over to you first. What were your thoughts on pitching a reality TV show? And just when I say elevator pitch, I said this in the email. Don't feel like you have to give me every detail. It's not a production Bible. You could keep it to that traditional 2 or 3 sentences. Just give us an idea, give us the gist, and maybe you have multiple ideas.
I have one idea, but it's so incredibly different than yours, and it's maybe not even the realm of what you were thinking of what you pitched, but I think it's so funny I have to share it anyway. My reality show idea is starring myself, Colin, and Chris. This is a Sacred Symbols reality show. You think, oh, video games, we got to do something gaming related. Who can get the most trophies? You have to live in a house for a week. No. I was thinking one of the funniest things that we could do, it's imagine like a Mythbusters style show where the 3 of us are given a basic household task. We must complete it. We get like 30 minutes on a computer, and then it's like, okay, the Sacred Symbols boys now must change the oil on a car. And the 3 of us have to work together in order to do these different tasks. Maybe one of them, it's like, okay, we gotta put a shelf up. We have to install a hot water heater.
Yeah, like building the house as we go, like maybe even starting and build, like from how far can we go? Or they give us a little shell and then we have to do all the work,
Right. Yeah. And obviously, I mean, this would just be, it would be so incredibly embarrassing for the 3 of us, but it would be so perfect in that the 3 of us are like some of the least handy people probably on the internet in general. So I don't know, Colin, what do you think about this idea?
Yeah,
about
I like
us
that idea.
Teaming up for this?
Well, because it could be like a triumphant idea too, where it's like we get better and better. Certainly we wouldn't be inept forever, right? I would imagine not.
You'd get good.
Right. Yeah, so I dig that idea. It's very different.
Dustin, let me iterate on your idea for a second.
Sure,
I like your idea the way it is, but wouldn't this be interesting? Sort of give it a little bit of a 3 Little Pig thing where it's competitive. Like Chris, Dustin, and Kyle have to survive for the night in the wilderness. You have the same amount of materials, build a shelter, make your food, right? Because then it takes on a competitive turn of somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose.
Yeah.
Who builds the brick house? Who builds the straw house?
That would
or
be...
maybe it's 3 people building the straw house over and over again, which is hilarious. So yeah, I like both. I like both, but you guys working together is a little too, I don't know. That's a little too lovey-dovey for me. I need to see a little more cutthroat.
That's a Survivor Man style show with the 3 of us. That actually is, I mean, theoretically would be possible. I don't know if I'd want to subject us to that, but the thought of us like out in the woods trying to, it's like, okay, you have to start a fire. We'll give you the flint and the knife, but everything else, it's on you. You guys gotta, you each individually have to figure it out. If you don't figure it out, you're gonna freeze. You're gonna die.
We all have to. My favorite part is when we all have to cuddle to stay warm.
Oh yeah.
The very nice. I mean, I think your fans, the Sacred fans, would appreciate something like this because it goes outside. It takes the personalities. Now you guys aren't beholden to just talking about video games now, which I know you do on the show anyway. I know how potting works, but you know what I mean? That might be cool to see you guys outside of your offices, outside of your studios, away from the mics.
Yeah.
Right? I like it.
You made me think. I have a second pitch, but this was a serious pitch that I think I've talked about it on a show maybe years ago. I still want to do this. Legit. You guys say the word. I don't know if it will make any money, so it'd be a passion project. The idea is to do and this isn't even really a reality show. It'd be like a documentary, I guess, but I want to do Knockback Homecoming. You guys go and find the tape.
Yes.
It would be cool. Okay, you could find the tape, but then you could also go to these various locations mentioned on Knockback. Just make it like...
it would be fun. We should do that.
I love that. I absolutely love that.
It would cost... I mean, we'd have to go out to Long Island for...
It wouldn't cost that much, but...
a week. We'd have to get some more people to help us film it, but it would be a very niche project for the fans. But
very
I think it would be... I think it would be very fun for us to do, but maybe someday Knockback Homecoming.
Coming to
Kickstarter. I guess we don't need to kickstart it. Just do it.
Yeah, we don't need Kickstarter. We'll just do it. Yeah.
I think that's a gimme. I'm not going to stop thinking about that.
Maybe it'll be the last episode we ever do or something like that. Of that show.
Oh, I kind of, dude, that would be a great way to culminate. You know what, though? I think when we've talked about this in the past, I brought up this point as well. And I'm not sure where you guys stand on this. For the tape, specifically digging up the VHS tape, do we go in on the sly or do we try to get permission?
No, we got to get permission from them. And I think that would be part of be funny to be like, we lived here in the 90s and
trying to explain.
Yeah,
this.
so basically what happened. And we're legit. You can look us up. Here's all these different things. We'll pay you. I want to do it on, up and up. Yeah, okay, we're going to be digging up their yard for a little while. It's like,
that's true.
It'd be like, throw them a few grand or something and just be like, let us just stick around. We're not going to fuck around with anything. And we're, that would be funny. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Kyle, we'll stick with you, man. What are you thinking about for your TV reality show? And what do you got to pitch?
Well, I'm basing it on this idea. Do you guys remember Mars One? It was actually Dutch. So I don't know if and not that you're Dutch, Locke, but I don't know if it was more in your realm over there, but
I'm looking it up.
It rings a bell, but no.
It was basically this idea that there would be a private Martian colony sent to Mars where it would be funded and the science would basically be done in this kind of documentary, but also reality show situation where people would compete to get on these ships and they would be like permanent missions to Mars, basically. And I was totally went nowhere, obviously. But I was thinking about that and I'm like, I loved that idea. I thought it was actually a really interesting idea. And so my idea is I love the book / the movie Contact, Carl Sagan. And in that, I don't know if you guys recall, this is a spoiler for Contact. So if you want to see or listen to Contact, I guess you should just fast forward about 15 seconds. But in Contact, they create this device that will send them, they get these instructions from some alien instructions to create this thing, and it's destroyed. But in the story, there's a second one built by this rich dude who knew that something like that it felt like something was going to happen and built an exact specification of it, like this mega rich guy. So in my idea for my reality show, there's this really rich guy that's like, listen, I've spent billions and billions and billions and billions of my own money in developing an independent commercial spaceflight company. We're going to have this competition, both in engineering and for people going to the planet over many years. And we'll document it all along the way, very much like Mars One was trying to do in order to kind of self-fund in the back end. Some sort of the thing that hurt Mars One was it wasn't serious. There wasn't real money behind it. There's just no I've recommended this book in the past, but and it's a little old now, but there's a book called Packing for Mars by this woman, Mary Roach. And it's awesome because it's all the random shit that you have to actually consider if you want to go to Mars. Things you would never, ever, ever, ever think of. Well beyond what you would assume, not only about the ships themselves and all the rest, but the things that happen to humans and the needs of humans and all of the rest. And so it's not going to be, getting to Mars is not going to be trivial at all. I mean, I think that's why even Elon Musk is so interested in the Artemis project and kind of going to the moon and kind of learning things so that we can use that as a launching pad literally for trips to Mars. So you need in this hypothetical, you would need real money and real engineering and all of that. But imagine if you just had this amazingly rich person that was willing to dedicate all of their money into this one project. And ultimately, I would love the reality show to kind of culminate in really I guess it would almost be Big Brother-ish, because I don't think you can really send anyone with them unless you wanted to have people go on the suicide mission or go to this trip to Mars. But ultimately culminating in this competition, which Mars One envisioned, where people would compete to be the best permutation of crews to go and live on Mars and really be there with people at the second and with all the minutia of actually going to Mars for the first time, so that it's fully recorded for the human experience. So that's kind of where my mind would be some sort of years long, almost reminds me of that film. What was that film where they checked in with the kid over many years?
Boyhood.
Boyhood. Yeah.
Linkletter. Something filmed over, and that would be, this benefactor would be very rich. So this would be something that would be possible where you don't have to have a ton of output. You just want to chronicle it over time. And have this whole stem to stern reality look, maybe half documentary, half reality show, because I want it to be competitive about getting the very best people for these different slots or whatever. and the experience of getting to Mars as a people and having it done privately instead of having to wait for NASA, which is just never going to happen at this point. So,
yeah. Kyle, now the Mars One thing, this was completely off my radar. I never heard of it. I just looked up the Wikipedia to give you guys some context. Mars One was a small private Dutch organization, as Kyle said, that received money from investors. So this was kind of like Kickstarter, by claiming it would use it to land the first humans on Mars and leave them there to establish a permanent human colony. From its announcement in 2012 to its bankruptcy in early 2019, it is estimated to have received tens of millions of dollars, which is not a lot for a venture like this,
no,
right?
Not at all.
The organization was not an aerospace company and did not manufacture hardware. And then it goes on to flesh it out with a lot more explanation on the Wikipedia page. But that's pretty fascinating that they were even, it sounded like sci-fi from the start that they were trying to sell as a realistic.
Yeah, I remember when it was announced, I was a journalist at the time, and I remember being like, yeah, this sounds too good to be true, but it's so cool. Like, we're getting into the realm of people thinking about trying to do this and putting their name on it and trying. Like, some of these people are crooks, no doubt, but it's like what bothers me about, and we've talked about Elon Musk in the past, but it's like, I understand why people don't like Elon Musk for a number of different reasons, but I really do respect the person who's not only putting his money where his mouth is, but is trying to like do a bunch of things. Like, he's doing things, whether or not you hate him or like him. It's like, well, they're building a car, they're building spaceships, and they're working with NASA, and they're doing this and they're doing that, and they're read into all these secret programs to work on them and stuff. And I'm like, this is cool. Like, it's neat to have, instead of just holding all of your money as tightly as possible, he actually is basically risking it all. And I think that that's respectable in some ways. But I think that there's some people have negative, it's like Cobra, like trying to do like negative things. Or, of course, people that are just hucksters and don't. And so who knows? Boss Lansdorp was the guy's name, Boss Lansdorp. And who knows if he was like for real or not. But I think Elon Musk is for real. Like, if Elon Musk said like, we're going to do a Mars One like thing, I would actually believe it, as opposed.
Yeah, he puts his money where his mouth is, man. I mean, what's going on with the with drilling under LA, doing the tunnels? That's still happening?
Yeah, the Boring Company.
The Boring Company.
I don't know if that's still happening or not. No, I did. The last I saw of him was a lot of rocketry, but he was on 60 Minutes a couple of weeks ago, because it was a disappointing episode because they were just talking about Artemis and how it's already falling kind of aside. Like, it's already kind of not falling apart, but they're like, it is really expensive. And I'm like, yes, it is expensive. It's fucking expensive to do what we're trying to do, but we waste so much money, on all these other things. And then they want to pull back on these civilization defining moves so that they can drop bombs on other countries and let millions and millions of people into the country illegally and feed them and house them and clothe them. And all of that is the more vital to political interest in the country than like striving to explore. There's nowhere else to go here. Like, we got to go up, now.
Have you seen the show For All Mankind?
Yeah, on Apple. Yeah, I watched the first season. I've always wanted to get back to it, but I have not seen it since then. Yeah, I love it. I mean, that's like right up my alley. It's good shit.
Yeah, that speaks to.
Well, it basically deals with what you're talking about, right? Especially the later seasons. I don't want to spoil it, but in the later seasons, they want to go to Mars, and there's this Elon Musk figure who makes a company out of it, and it's really interesting. But you already know it, so yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's for people that don't know, it's like this kind of fictional look at the space race, as if it was much crazier, than it was between the Soviets and the Americans, like more serious.
Well, the Soviets won,
right? Right, exactly. And then, but they're advancing way. So like the ideas in the 50s in NASA that like we would go to Mars in the 70s, like, are fulfilled or like, conceivable in that world, where in our world we just got disinterested. And it's really hard. And that's the thing that Mars One fell for, really, was that it's not trivial. Like, there is nothing trivial about going into space and then getting somewhere else in space. Like, from every angle, it is trying to kill you. And so if you want to do it and be alive, you got to really be careful about it. And I think Jeff Bezos gets a lot of shit too, but Blue Origin is another company that Blue Origin is actually kind of low key. And I learned this from the 60 Minutes episode. SpaceX needs more time for the moon mission. And I guess they're taking this certain view of it. And like in the background, Blue Origin is taking this other view and has been kind of low key funded to see if they can do something concurrent that would be like a different approach to get us there. Because I think they're really afraid of the Chinese getting back first, because they said on the thing, they're like, the Chinese will just go there and claim it. Like old school kind of
plant their flags.
Yeah. And like, we have to be there, so if you care about that sort of thing, but yeah, that's my
really
idea.
I love it. I mean, I feel like we could already launch our own subscription service with these 3 ideas before we even hear Locks. I mean, we got a lot going on. These are all sustainable. I mean, who wouldn't fund these ideas? I love them. Locke, my friend.
Okay, well,
sell me your reality show.
Time to ruin it then. I remember the first time I was in the U.S. Very short story, but the first time I was in the U.S., I remember August in the year 2000. I was watching TV. We didn't have reality TV where I lived. That doesn't exist here in Belgium. But I was watching TV in the U.S. I was in Kingston, Arizona. I think my dad had to be there for work, and I just went with him. And in our little Motel 6, I was watching TV, and I watched the Survivor finale there. Like, I watched like Richard Hatch win and all the drama, and people, his contestant called him a snake and the other one called him a rat, and I was like, what is this? I've never seen this before. These are like real people fighting. This is amazing. So then I went back to Belgium, and then apparently the Dutch north of us invented Big Brother, so then we got Big Brother pretty fast after that, and then the Belgians invented the Mole. I don't know if
I remember the Mole. I love the Mole. Yeah, that was where Anderson Cooper was like, that was the first thing I ever saw him do back in the day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's originally our broadcasting company, which I work for now, invented it. And then ever since then, I kind of loved reality TV, but with contestants. So it had to have like a game element. And now recently, just a couple of days ago, I watched Jury Duty. Have you guys heard of this?
No.
It's a new reality show. The premise is nuts. I thought it was amazing, the premise at least. The premise is there's this one guy there's this jury, there's this trial, and people get called up for jury duty, and everything is fake. The whole trial is fake, the jurors are fake, the judge is fake, except for one guy who thinks it's real. So they basically put him in this weird situation where the jury has to be what's it called? Secluded? Sequestered. That's the one. Yeah. The jury has to be sequestered. So, and they tell him that they're making a reality TV show about jury duty, so the cameras don't bother him. He thinks it's all normal, but everything is fake, and they keep dropping these weird little bombs during the trial, and he keeps getting surprised, of course. But all his fellow jurors are also in the plot. They're all actors, so they're all weird. You got like the nerdy guy, the muscle guy, the woman who comes on to him, and it's really fun. They worked it out very wholesome, so it wasn't very engaging to watch, but it was still fun. It was only 8 episodes, I think, so very, very quickly done. But I thought that was such a cool premise. But then I thought, well, that one guy didn't know about it, but what if we flip that around? What if we make reality and have the audience not know about it? So my idea would be to have like 3 or 4 internet celebrities. Let's pick you 3. You 3 start like a new podcast, and the podcast is basically Constellation. Like, you bring up topics and you just talk about your personal lives. But what the audience doesn't know is that it's all scripted, and every so often, every other episode or something, you drop these little story bits into it without the audience really knowing that it's not true. For instance, one episode, Dustin talks about an old girlfriend that didn't end well with him, or Colin talks about how Micah has been absent lately, or just going away somewhere, and he doesn't really know where. We just keep doing that for a couple of weeks, and then suddenly a Reddit post or something else on Twitter pops up accusing Dustin of being an abuser, or getting me too'd or something, like an anonymous post. Nobody knows what it's about, and you guys don't do anything. You don't react to it. Just the next episode, everything normal, and then the episode after that, everything normal too. But then you put out another post, another fake Reddit post, accusing the girl of being fake, because she is, of course, she's not real. And then we'll just see what the audience does. We'll just see what the internet does. Do they cancel Dustin? Do they find the girl? How does it progress? So the audience basically becomes our reality show. And we can take it even further. Like Micah goes missing, and then maybe it can turn out that she's secretly having an affair with Dagan. And then the audience slowly figures this out by Micah posting a picture on Instagram from Dagan's house, and then somebody recognizes it. And we can just very subtle guide the audience to like the right solution of the story. And then at the end, it would be cool if everyone involved is like either dead or like complete in jail, or Dustin is like a serial abuser or whatever. You know how people on the internet work. Like you all get extremely canceled. That has to be the solution. And then the final episode, you tell them that it's fake, that it's all fake, and you basically hold a mirror up to the audience, showing them that they're the ones who are canceling people, and they're the ones who are driving these stories to insane heights, and that it's not normal. So you basically flip the script on them, which is, of course, not realistic. I don't think it can be
like
done.
Black Mirror.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Locke, some of this is already true, though. I mean, having the audience speculate wildly about small parts of our lives. I mean, this is a huge problem, but it does happen.
Oh, yeah.
Here and there. But
yeah,
I don't
you're
know.
just playing that up.
The performance art of putting myself out there, purposely canceling myself by putting out that I'm an abuser. I mean, am I willing to risk it all for the art? Maybe. But you said possibly end up dead at the end. And that's also could be a favorable outcome.
It should go so far that it becomes clear that this can't be real anymore. Like it has to go so far that the news stations are going to get interested or something. It has to go way too far that it just can't be real anymore. And that's when you tell them, like, you idiots. Well, maybe not you idiots. They won't like that. But you show them that how far they can go, really, because the reality show is basically about the audience, about the internet. Like, how far are they willing to take it to cancel someone, or to prove that someone is uncancelable, or to prove that Micah is cheating on Colin, or that Dustin didn't do this, or that this woman that accuses Dustin doesn't exist? How far is the audience willing to go?
Yeah, dude, I think this is ingenious. I really do. And I love that it's open-ended, because we know how the audience is going to react, but we don't really know. Yeah. And there is a built-in ending. There's going to be a reveal, but it's just this, in the meantime, it's just this protracted April Fool's joke, Yeah. And it's why people tune in to reality shows, to see what the next thing's going to be. How far is this character going to go? How far is this fight going to go? This grudge, that, dude, I love it. This is the outside of the box level of thinking that I appreciate. It's good shit. Yeah.
But it's also very unrealistic, I think. But it would be so cool if you've got to do it with 4 people who are already out there, because otherwise you won't get any views, of course.
That's a good point.
Has to be like 4 internet celebrities, and then they have to agree with it, of course, and they have to get canceled. So I don't think it's very realistic. But
this is like, what was the thing with Joaquin Phoenix where he did the role where he acted like a total asshole for a year? Like, put his gum under Jimmy Kimmel's desk or something like that. Like, he
went on Letterman.
Yeah. That was like a huge career risk. I remember at the time people were like, man, he's done. Like, he's totally this asshole. And then it ended up being for that project, which I don't think was very successful, but obviously he bounced back.
Yeah. He was selling himself as a rapper, right? Like, as a hip hop
artist.
That's
it. Yeah.
It was definitely like shades of like, what's his name? Andy Kaufman, right? Like, doing that whole thing. Yeah, that's interesting. I love it. This would be a perfect vehicle for the Sacred Guys. Kind of mash up Locke's idea with Dustin's idea. Just throw the Sacred, because it has to be a known entity with lots of followers and, a beloved thing that everybody's following you guys for, a show. Your personality's attached to that thing. That'd be cool. I love it.
Yeah, it's a nice idea.
It's good shit. Yeah, fun.
Let's do it.
Stuff.
So.
Let's do
Yeah, cat's out of the bag now. So no matter what, now if we do if anything dramatic happens, people are gonna be like, what about that episode of Constellation where Locke
good.
Lock in. Good point. Now it's out there.
Just delete this. Done.
Yeah.
Well, I'm satisfied if you guys are.
Yeah, I'm good.
You guys really met the you stepped up and you met the challenge. I appreciate it. Well, look, it's been hours. I feel like if you guys are satisfied, that just about does it for another episode of Constellation. For us, for the loyal listeners, parting is such sweet sorrow. Thanks so much for chatting with us on this Wednesday, helping us get over this hump day, which is unusual, again, for Constellation, right? And maybe we'll have a hump night.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Oh.
I'll make an eyebrows. You can't see.
Yeah. Probably not.
Well, listen, let's throw it over to our heroes for parting shots and goodbyes. Kyle, I'll start with you. Long live and prosper.
Thank you. Well, it's funny when I was when we were talking here just in the last few minutes, I got an email from my HOA, the newsletter. Our newsletter is called The Green Life.
Of course it is.
And it's
that's timely.
Yeah, and it's very timely. And there's all sorts of things here. We have a few events coming up if you guys are interested. Easter egg roll and the summer tennis camps are underway. The pool is accepting. We have a swim team. I don't know what's going on around here. It's very weird.
Now, are all the neighborhood activities sort of biased towards parents and kids?
Oh, yeah,
like
definitely.
when you guys go in, okay.
Yeah, we
so
don't. They have farmers
fair.
markets and stuff. Like, we don't really do anything. No, it's fine. I don't care about that. Do your thing, children and kids, and parents of children and kids. But I just am in this holding period or this holding pattern right now as we have to go into the live show, because this will go live after the live show even happens, I think, right? So
yeah,
so we'll be past that. The audience will be past that or whatever, whoever's there. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes, and I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun and interesting, I think, time. So yeah, thanks for having me today. Maybe I won't be on next week. Give everyone a break.
Oh, you think you're gonna?
Yeah, maybe let's try it again. Get out of here. Leave me alone.
Well, thank you, my friend. I move over to Dustin. Dust, thanks for joining us this week, and I'll see you in just a few short days, actually.
Yeah. I'm so excited to get everybody together. And it'll be cool. Brad, this will be the first time we've met Brad in person.
That's right.
And if just Maddie could be there, it would be the whole crew.
You guys
really.
are kind of like besties. Are you going to kiss when you see him?
Just kiss? I mean, I don't know. Yeah,
Smooch?
It'll be a good time. Excited to hang out. We're road tripping out. So I'm looking forward to that aspect. I think road trips.
You're
fun.
Driving. That's
could be fun.
Yeah, what is that?
We're
6
saving
hours?
the company a lot of money.
Oh, thank you.
By driving, but we wanted to drive out. So we're driving out, and I think it's like 6 hours. So we'll be on the road very shortly. So excited to get together, and should be fun. I wish Lockmort was there desperately, but I understand. I forgive you, Lock.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's very generous of you. Thank you so much.
And Kyle, with the money Dustin's saving, I'm going to be flying in the private jet.
Oh, sick.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's about an 8-minute flight.
And that'll be good for the environment too. Taylor.
It's a short flight. It's only 80 miles. I mean, what is that? 8 minutes or something? We're going to go subsonic.
Yeah, like when the Yankees play the Phillies, do you think they drive? They must, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, definitely. I think, now don't quote me on this. Do not quote me on this, but I think when the Sixers play the Celtics, they drive.
Oh,
and that's a lot further.
Yeah. Oh, way further.
That's a lot further. But don't quote me on that because I don't know why. I should shut up. I'm talking out of school. Listen, last, but certainly first in my heart, the mastermind behind the notorious and beloved Lockmort edit. Lock, I bid you a fond farewell, my friend.
Thank you. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I don't do this a lot, but it's so much fun always to talk with you guys. I really enjoy it, and have a great live show. I know what's going to happen, but you do too, Dagan. I think so. It's going to be fun. A bunch of
people are going to come out of mass and beat the shit out of me, rough me up,
rolls of quarters in a sock. Yeah. It's going to be like Full Metal Jacket. Well, Locke, you're going to be missed, my friend, but that's why we're looking forward to Europe. Nudge, nudge on the call man up there to go across the pond.
Definitely, yeah.
And I think it's inevitable. It'll happen at some point.
As I understand, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but as I understand, like we're locking things in a greater way than we were last year when we really wanted to do it. So I feel pretty good that we'll be over there soon. I wouldn't be getting my passport renewed with some level of urgency if I didn't think it was going to happen. I would just not do anything at all.
I love it. I need the hope. Yeah. Love to hear it. Well, everybody, that's how we do it here at Last Stand Media. In like a lion, out like a lamb. Thank you out there for your love, kindness, and support of Constellation and all things Last Stand Media. It's been a pleasure having you. patreon.com/laststandmedia for early ad-free access as always. Pick up some fresh merch at laststandmedia.store. And that's that. We'll see you next time. For Colin, Dustin, Locke, and myself, thanks so much for tuning in. Until we meet again, let Dagan host. Goodbye.
Constellation is a product of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show was conceived by and is directed and hosted by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is my brother, Dagan Moriarty. The show is produced by Last Stand's executive producer, Dustin Furman, and is edited by associate producer, Ben Smith. All Last Stand theme music is by Ramon Narvaez, and all of our graphics and logos are by Dagan Moriarty. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's podcasts, including Constellation, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest support tier, and we're infinitely grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor.